Oh, oops, that was the wrong button. Meant to unmute, but I didn't mean to there. Okay. Hello, welcome. There's... Oh, that's not correct. Hey, my uptimer is all wrong. Let me fix that real quick. There we go. So, hi, yes, hello. Welcome to something a little weird. There's no session this week. Yet we're still sitting on Foundry. Reed, thank you for the resub. 5 months, damn. Hello. He-wo. Come on, text-to-speech. Get it together. Yeah, so there's no session this week. The DM is very busy. Here, let me just make myself a little bit bigger. There we go. A little more visible here. So, we'll get to that in a moment. I mean, everyone here probably already knows, but you know, for the sake of things, normally there would be a D&D session this week where me and a group of other people would play Dungeons and Dragons, but that's been called off this week, and I had to cancel a bunch of shit over the past couple weeks, so I did not want to cancel, and I couldn't think of what else to do. And so I've had this idea in the back of my head for a while, back pocket, as it were. Is me and my roommate slash one of my fellow players in this campaign tend to talk a lot about the usability, the problems and strengths and weaknesses of the different spells in the game of Dungeons and Dragons. And you know, how they have applications and usefulness that stretch beyond just simple, like, is this good in combat? And we get into a lot of discussions about these things. And she mentioned that, like, I have a lot of opinions that might be worth talking about. And so I popped this idea in the back of my head a while ago and realized this was probably a good time to deploy it. So what we're gonna do here is instead of playing Dungeons and Dragons, as I can't play just by myself, and I didn't give Chad enough time to make characters, we're going to go over the spells in the Bard spell list, and I'm going to talk about them, and I'm going to give you my opinion on them and rate them, and of course, those in chat are welcome to chip in, chime in, you know, state your own opinions about them. Disagree with me if you want. I mean, you're wrong if you disagree with me. No, no, you're not. Everyone's entitled to their opinions, although you might be wrong if you disagree with me. It depends on how. So I have Foundry open here to use as a reference for these things, as finding a central reference is, without paying a subscription, very difficult. And I do not have the latest books. I have almost everything. Last couple of years I really slacked on buying source books. So we're going to have Foundry open here as a way to quickly check and look up different spells. If you find I'm missing any, or hell, if you have any specific recommendations or questions, like how do you feel about Guiding Bolt, stuff like that, feel free to toss those in the chat. I'm not really feeling particularly strict about this in any way, shape, or form. This is very informal. I was going to make a tier maker list for this, but at the last minute I found out that they wanted some really invasive permissions on my Twitter account, which, like, no thank you, you know? Just a very firm no thank you on that. So instead, I've gone and made everyone's favorite thing, a spreadsheet. Let me just, where is it? Let me bring it back. Let me bring it down on screen. I believe it's stuck in the void right now. Transform Center. There it is. Okay. I don't know how visible that is. I hope it's fairly visible. Let me make it a little bigger. So I've got a spreadsheet open here where I will be putting in spells to sort of rank them into a tier. You can don't worry if you think I've done one already. The tiers aren't hard and fast. I don't believe in hard and fast tiers except for one. I'll get to that one. So for the most part, we're just going with the standard S through F rank, and I will explain my logic as we go. I'm gonna be going by level because level has a lot to do with both distribution and, like, individual spell power. I did not mean to tab there. Hello, Gravel Spots. Everybody in the chat say hello to Gravel Spots. Let me move the list out of the way so we can see his beautiful art. Hello, Gravel Spots. You're a bard. You're my bard, so I'm a little biased. I suppose I should... Stinky Singer, yeah. Yeah, Gravel Spots is pretty stinky. Gnolls are pretty stinky. I love Gravel Spots as well. Okay. I will not waffle too long. We've got a real stinker to start with anyway. It's Blade Ward. So, Blade Ward is a cantrip. These first spells are all cantrips. Blade Ward, Dancing Lights, Friends, etc. Which means they are always free. You don't have to spend any resources to use a cantrip. They just kind of pop out. In an MMORPG, they would just be a cooldown, but they wouldn't even be on a long cooldown. You can use these every round, as often as you want, as long as you know, meet the conditions to use them. Some of them are like, if you do this, then do it. And in that case, you need to first meet the condition of the cantrip to cast it. So we've got Blade Ward here. Blade Ward is a cantrip that costs 1 normal action. It has... I guess I should briefly go over the anatomy of a spell. So spells have multiple features to them. Of course, they have a name. The least important thing. All it does is identify the spell. I'm pretty sure spells don't usually refer to each other by name or like spell name doesn't mean anything. Cantrip refers to its level in this case. Every spell has a level from 0 to 9. Level 0 spells are called cantrips, because they're effectively free. It is of the Abjuration School. Every spell has a school. There are 7 schools going off the top of my head. You'd think that I would have memorized that, but I in fact never did. And that's because there are a lot of spell schools. There are 7 or 8 of them, and there are so many fucking spells, which is also why we're primarily functioning with just the Bard spell list for now. And schools are used mostly by class features to target certain spells. There's some special magic items that care about it. Spells do change schools every edition, but we're speaking strictly 5th edition for now. So every spell has a school. It really just is used for the purpose of magic items and class features that target or care about spells. You'll say, like, I think there's an item that adds +1 or advantage on all your enchantment spells, things like that. There's wizard, and there is a flavor of wizard for every school of magic. Not as that important. Spells also have components. Components is the word I was looking for, which are listed over here on this. They're verbal, somatic, and material. Those are the 3 primary components of a spell. Verbal just means that you need to be able to speak and be heard. Somatic means that you need to be able to move around and make complex gestures. And material means you need to have a specific thing on you, a consumable item or a focus, something like that. So Blade Ward. Blade Ward is a cantrip. It's an abjuration spell. It requires your hands to be free and your mouth to be free, and you have to be able to be heard. A lot of people get caught up on verbal components of spells, but pull open the rules for spellcasting. It is important to note that to cast a spell with the verbal component, there's that, you actually do have to be heard. The words themselves aren't the source of the spell's power, rather the particular combination of sounds with specific pitch and resonance sets the threads of magic in motion. So if you're like silenced, it doesn't work, or if you're gagged. But there are some other situations where that might come up. I lost my spell list. Oops. We had it here in this category here. Also, let me turn up the music. The music's kind of... Wait, no. I turned down on my headphones. The music's probably fine just for you. Ha 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 ha. Funny. Funny words, haha. Let me grab that spell list again. Spell class. Bard. Size it. I can't believe that it like closed itself, but that's how Foundry modules be sometimes. If everyone's deaf and verbal spells would still work because you don't have to be able to understand the words in most cases. You just have to be able to speak them, and they have to be able to travel through the air. The sound is the important part. So Blade Ward, verbal component, somatic component. You have to be able to speak and move your hands. It costs 1 action, which means it takes up your entire primary turn, so to speak. Every turn you get to spend your movement, which is a certain amount of tiles or feet you can move depending on what measuring system you're using. You get an action, and you get a bonus action, and then you have a resource called a reaction that is for triggered abilities. So Blade Ward takes your entire turn, effectively, leaving you with only a bonus action and your movement. You extend your hand and trace a sigil of warding in the air. Until the end of your next turn, you have resistance against bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage dealt by weapon attacks. This sounds really good on the surface, but Blade Ward is one of the worst fucking cantrips in the game. It is not quite as bad as one we're gonna get to. But Blade Ward is a solid F. You are trading your turn for taking half damage from specific damage types of specific attacks. That damage dealt by weapon attacks thing is the real killer here, because it means that other sources of bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, like traps, environmental effects that might be going on, certain attacks that monsters have count as abilities or activated features, or not as weapon attacks. There's certain spells that deal bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Uh, Claws do still count, fangs would still count, like claws and bites and punches all count as weapon attacks effectively. With Blade Ward, you were spending your whole turn to take half damage from weapon attacks, which means they might not even hit you in the first place. Terrible cantrip. However, if you ever manage to get this cantrip as a bonus action, its value goes way the hell up, because a full turn of resistance for the... fewer things use your bonus actions. If you've watched me play Gravel Spots quite a bit, you might notice that my bonus actions are spent almost entirely on class features. My spells are free, more or less, to take up my action however they will. But if I was any other class, I would be real big on getting this spell as a bonus action. As a regular action, I was just you don't do anything for the rest of the turn. You just turtle up, and turtling up is not fun. On top of that, it's a combat-only spell. Given that it only works against weapon attacks, most traps, like I mentioned earlier, are gonna get around this. It is poo-poo garbage. So we're gonna move on to Dancing Lights. Now, Dancing Lights is a fun one. And yes, that is a good point, Glecko. You can also just take the dodge action, which gives you gives all... I think the next... Let me double check that, but I believe it's the next attack against you has disadvantage. I need to go to the right rules tab for this. The actions in combat is the... Oh, that's gonna screw up my spell list. But yes, you can't just take the dodge action. It's more or less the same thing. If you're a rogue and you can do like the dodge action as a bonus action like Gravel Spots can, you could potentially do like a super full turtle turn, but yeah. Blade Ward, not great. And if you're trying to grab it on other classes, barbarians just get that as part of their rage. But we're talking about Dancing Lights now. Dancing Lights is an evocation cantrip, so, you know, level 0. Notably, Dancing Lights has... Oh, I forgot about the fourth component, because I don't tend to think of it as a component. There is a fourth component to spells called Concentration. It's typically just you can only have concentration on one thing at a time, and if you take damage, you might lose concentration, which ends the spell. So this has a verbal, somatic, material component as well. Dancing Lights requires your full attention effectively. You have to be able to move, you have to be able to speak, you have to be able to have the specific items on hand, which is a bit of phosphorus, or witchwood, or a glowworm. Typically this will be handled by either using your focus, which bypasses material components, kind of a silly mechanic these days, or having a spell component pouch, which automatically has all of the components you need, thereby making material components kind of silly. But so we don't tend to care about material components very much, even though they seem like a big deal. It costs 1 action with a range of 120 feet. It has no limitations on what spaces it can be put into, and it lasts up to a minute if you fully concentrate on it. You create 4 torch-sized lights within range, making them appear as torches, lanterns, or glowing orbs that hover in the air for the duration. You can also combine the 4 lights into one glowing, vaguely humanoid form of medium size. Whichever form you choose, each light sheds dim light in a 10-foot radius. As a bonus action on your turn, you can move the lights up to 60 feet to a new spot within range. A light must be 20 feet within 20 feet of another light created by the spell, and a light winks out if it exceeds the spell's range. Dancing Lights is an interesting one, because on the surface it does not seem super useful, but while a lot of groups overlook the lighting mechanics of D&D, as we're going to talk about when I get to light, being able to create sources of light is kind of really useful. There's a lot of situations you wouldn't think about where just having a little 10-foot light source, it helps to think, for once, to step into reality for a moment. Imagine all sorts of situations where you could just wiggle your fingers, maybe toss like a worm into the air, and conjure 4 little glowing like light bulbs. Dancing Lights has a lot of little handy utility uses. Additionally, you can also do shenanigans with these lights. It's not the most shenanigan spell in the world, but you can use it to distract people in case you need to stealth around. You can use it to lure certain monsters around, or certain critters that might be attracted to lights, like giant moths or other kinds of insects. You can use it to create specific lighting for a scene, to put on a stage play or an opera or what have you. You can use it to specifically spotlight some areas, to sneak around without getting caught, although that's still that's going to be really really dependent on your DM's rulings. I'm trying not to rate things too hard on what a DM would have to rule them for, because that's obviously going to be different from DM to DM. And yeah, that is a good point, Tim. It is incredibly fabulous. Dancing Lights, while it is not the most broadly useful spell, nor is it the most impactful spell, it is a solid B. Dancing Lights, you can't really go wrong with picking it up, you know? Next we got things for Grunt Trigger Theater, the Mind Damage Final. Oh, what? Yeah, exactly. That is what I was talking about. No adventure is uniformly lit. Just think of any situation where you want to be able to conjure up Dancing Lights. So this next one, Friends, this one's actually a personal favorite of mine, although a little morally questionable. This is an enchantment cantrip. Bards get a lot of enchantment spells. Oh. Dancing Lights is evocation? Oh, yeah, it's okay. Thought it was illusion, but we'll get to an illusion spell. So, Friends is... yeah, get it out of your systems out there. Friends is an enchantment cantrip that requires somatic material components. Although we don't have the material component listed here, I believe that if I remember correctly, the material component is some cologne or some perfume or breath spray, a breath mint, some minor cosmetic like lipstick, something you can apply very quickly to sort of to prime the spell. Oh, it actually, we do not have the casting duration, the casting description. We also don't have the proper target in this reference, but that's okay. I remember these things. It takes 1 action, lasts for up to a minute with concentration. You target 1 creature, cast the spell, and for the duration, you have advantage on all charisma checks directed at 1 creature of your choice that isn't hostile towards you. When the spell ends, the creature realizes that you used magic to influence its mood and becomes hostile towards you. A creature prone to violence might attack you. Another creature might seek retribution in other ways at the DM's discretion, depending on the nature of your interaction with it. So Friends, on the surface, seems like a spell with a huge downside. As soon as that minute is up, whoever you friendsed is more or less permanently an enemy. I feel like any person that you mind control into being your friend temporarily is going to be pretty mad about it when it wears off. But that's a full minute, and you don't need to still be there when that minute is up. And granting, Friends used to be more powerful. It used to briefly charm people, but now, at least I'm pretty sure it doesn't charm people. Now it just gives you advantage on all charisma checks directed at them. This actually means that you can use Friends to just lie your way through any door. In pretty much any situation where you need to lie, you can use Friends to make that lie a little bit easier. Deception checks or charisma checks. And as long as you're not already dealing with hostilities, pop this, you get your lie out of there, and you escape before that minute is up. Friends is a fantastic spell. However, you use it wrong, you could make the situation much worse. For that purposes, for the fact that it is broadly applicable, but not the easiest spell to use. I tend to put Friends in the C tier. It's one of those spells that I tend to pick up until, say, I have quite a few first level spell slots for Charm Person, and then Friends just kind of gets phased out. You might also notice that Gravel Spots does not have this spell or uses it, and that's because once your Charisma gets high enough, once your Charisma gets high enough, you also don't really have to use Friends anymore. The advantage on Deception can come from other places, or Persuasion, what have you. It can the benefit can come from other places, and this cantrip tends to fade into the background as levels go on. One of the spells that really typifies being able to swap out your spells. Next up, we've got Light. Light is an evocation cantrip. Very, very commonly taken one. Requires a verbal and material component. You have to be able to speak, and you have to have a firefly or some phosphorescent moss. It does prompt a saving throw. We'll get to that. It costs 1 action. You have to be able to touch it. It targets an object, and it lasts for an hour. Notice that there's no concentration. It just lasts for an hour. You touch one object that is no larger than 10 feet in any dimension. Until the spell ends, the object sheds bright light in a 20-foot radius and dim light for an additional 20 feet. The light can be colored as you like. Completely covering the object with something opaque blocks the light. Till the spell ends, you cast it again or dismiss it as an action. If you target an object held or worn by a hostile creature, that creature must succeed on a dexterity saving throw to avoid the spell. So Light is one of those incredibly useful, broadly applicable cantrips. It is... remember what I mentioned about the ability to make little lights? Well, imagine if you could turn any object into effectively a torch. Just by touching it. A flameless, heatless torch. Just any object. I could pick up a pencil and just blammo. It is brightly lit. It is giving off 40 feet of light in every direction. Even if it's just dim light for half of it, that's still quite good. Additionally, Light is one of those spells that allows you to carry less items. You might think that the material component means like, oh, well, you gotta have a firefly or something, but as I earlier mentioned, an arcane or divine focus can allow you to completely obviate the requirement for material components, or having a material component pouch assumes you always have the components on you. This means you don't have to carry heavy torches or lanterns and with oil, which can take a real valuable space, especially if you are a bard and you don't have a lot of strength, so you don't have a ton of carrying capacity for those few groups that care about carrying capacity. Light is going to be our first A rank spell, because there is no situation in which Light is not at least a little bit handy. You can cast it on an object and toss that object to distract somebody. You can create portable light sources with it. You can do a lot of things with the ability to make an object glow very brightly, and the ability to sort of create unrestricted light is not the most common one. This is a cantrip that's not going to be replaced because daylight is just too expensive to be used like this. And again, it saves you carrying capacity for those times that matters, which, if you're a spellcaster, you lighten a breakable object and smash it in half. If I remember correctly, that would just end the spell, as destroying the object would end the spell. That's how I would rule it as a DM, at least. You would not get two smaller half-lights, no. Light's gonna fit firmly in A rank. It's not a cantrip you're ever really gonna replace if you find yourself needing to take it. It can save you attunement slots because you won't need night vision goggles or something like that. Handy spell. Speaking of handy, we have one of my favorites. We have a cantrip called Mage Hand. Mage Hand is a conjuration cantrip that, once I start describing it, will seem very, very, very familiar if you've ever played the game Golden Sun. Requires a verbal and somatic component. It is 1 action. Has a range of 30 feet, targets one space, and lasts for up to a minute. A spectral floating hand appears at a point you choose within range. The hand lasts for the duration or until you dismiss it as an action. The hand vanishes as if it is more than 30 feet away from you, or if you cast this spell again. You can use your action to control the hand. You can use the hand to manipulate an object, open an unlocked container or door, store or retrieve an item from an open container, or pour the contents out of a vial. You can move the hand up to 30 feet each time you use it. The hand can't attack, activate magic items, or carry more than 10 pounds. Mage Hand is minor telekinesis. It's wonderful. It is kind of slow. Something a lot of people don't really pick up on, and something that is a little bit of a rulings question, and that a lot of groups don't do just because it's not fun, is that technically you have to spend one action to cast Mage Hand and create the hand, and then on your next turn you can use your action to manipulate it. Most people just combine the manipulation and the initial creation into the same action because, duh, that's the more interesting and fun way to do it. Mage Hand is a fantastic spell, a fantastic cantrip. As a bard, you would want this. There's very few situations where you wouldn't. Just being able to manipulate objects up to 30 feet away, sure, it can only carry, move, or you know, exert 10 pounds of force and go up to 30 feet, which isn't the most flexible, but just imagine you had a 30-foot long grabby hand, you know? One of those, you know what I'm talking about, one of those, let me see if I can grab an image. Those extendo grabbers. You had one of those pinchy grabber tools. I can't just paste into OBS. Pain in the butt. You know what I'm talking about, though. It's extremely useful. Now, the one thing is, unless, as a bard spell, you are not going to get the full use out of Mage Hand, as there is a rogue subclass that gets extra options to be used with Mage Hand. I'm actually gonna let's see if I can go over where it is. I don't think we actually have the Arcane Trickster information in here. Yeah, unfortunate. But Arcane Trickster is a rogue subclass whose whole world revolves around. Actually, hold on. Yeah, we don't have that. Click on the bar on the rogue. I believe we don't have. Yeah, we only have Thief here. Arcane Trickster gets to do extra things with Mage Hand that involves like stealing things out of people's hands, pulling levers, picking locks, all sorts of complicated, cool shit. Mage Hand, however, as a bard spell, Mage Hand is going to be an A tier spell. It doesn't quite have the ability to be S tier because we can't access those specific extra useful objects, extra useful applications, but it's still a fantastic. Yeah, our Foundry limitations. I'm just too lazy to go find the text elsewhere and bring it up, but just to highlight those couple of interactions. Mage Hand's a fantastic cantrip. Absolutely a plus. Good stuff. Good shit, as it were. I'm just gonna hold on. Oh, spreadsheets. Yeah, I'm just gonna do it like this. This will very quickly get out of hand, and that's fine. Mage Hand is fantastic. 30 feet range is a little bit shorter than you want it to be, but it's still plenty of range to get up to shenanigans, to use it for creative things, and to really just have a good time. A lot of these spells are going to be ranked on how much of a good time I can have with them, because I love to goof around with this shit in campaigns. Arcane Trickster gets to use it in combat and for some other things, but Mage Hand is a handy cantrip usable by pretty much anybody for anything. The sky's the limit. Next up, we got Mending. Now, Mending is our first transmutation spell. It's a transmutation cantrip. that requires verbal, somatic, and material components. You need 2 lodestones. Again, material components are so minor that we can basically overlook that requirement unless it costs gold points. Gold points. Gold pieces. Excuse me. It takes a minute to cast, not an action, a full minute. This means that if you were to use Mending in combat, you would have to use 10 actions successively. You'd still get your bonus actions, but you would have to use 10 actions successively without break. And that also means you can't move, if I remember correctly. You target one object, you have to touch it, and it is technically instantaneous. It has no duration. That might throw some people off. They might think instantaneous refers to casting speed, but no. This is a slow spell. This spell repairs a single break or tear in an object you touch, such as a broken chain link, 2 halves of a broken key, a torn cloak, or a leaking wineskin. As long as the break or tear is no larger than 1 foot in any direction, you mend it, leaving no trace of the former casting damage. This spell can physically repair a magic item or construct, but the spell can't restore magic to such an object. Mending is one of those spells that those cantrips that you take it for convenience, but you only take it under certain conditions. If your character is handy and an arts and craftsy type, you might take Mending. You might also not, preferring to fix things with your mundane skills instead of spending a cantrip slot on it. It's one of those cantrips you're really happy someone has if they have it, but as a bard, you don't want to be the one who had to take it. A transmuter wizard is going to get a little bit more out of this due to the extra flexibility they get out of transmutation spells. A cleric is very likely to have this, as several cleric domains get Mending. If you have an artificer in your party and they don't have this spell, you might want to consider having a talk with them about their spell choices. But Mending is good. It's not the most broadly applicable spell. It's not useful in a fight or a tight spot because you need a full minute to apply it. So if you're pushed for time, it might be a little bit hard to squeak out. A sorcerer would be able to obviate that, but a sorcerer who's spending sorcery points to quicken Mending might find themselves in other awkward situations fairly often, I'll say. One of those spells you tend to take for theme more than anything, especially as a bard. You might take this as a blade bard to sort of emphasize the care you put into your blades and your various props. Or if you're a prop comic, obviously, like a Gallagher type, you're going to want Mending to fix some things you break if you break the wrong things. Not the most widely applicable spell, but a fun one and a cool one. It's a fun cantrip. Next up, we've got Message. Message is a transmutation cantrip. Yeah, transmutation. Which requires a verbal, somatic, and material component, a short piece of copper wire. Again, doesn't cost anything, so who cares? You have to be able to move, you have to be able to speak. It takes 1 action, it goes up to 120 feet, targets 1 creature, and happens over the course of 1 round. It's the duration of 1 round. Why is there a duration of 1 round? Well, we'll get to that. Give me just a moment. You point your finger toward a creature within range and whisper a message. The target, and only the target, hears the message and can reply in a whisper that only you can hear. That's the 1 round duration. They have 1 round to reply, and they can whisper in a way only you can hear during that time. Oh, so I'm sorry. Ate a bunch of chocolate right before stream. Shouldn't have done that. Give me just a moment. You can cast this spell through solid objects if you're familiar with the target and know it is beyond the barrier. Magical Silence, 1 foot of stone, 1 inch of a common metal. Not quite sure what they mean by that. A thin sheet of lead, or 3 feet of wood blocks the spell. The spell doesn't have to follow a straight line and can travel freely around corners or through openings. Important to note, this particularly weird bit of wording here, an inch of common metal or a thin sheet of lead, does mean that precious metal does not block this spell at all. I guess that's why it is a short piece of copper wire. Sort of like a little little telegram spell. Message is an interesting spell. As a bard, you're probably gonna get a lot of use out of this, being able to whisper into people's ears from far away and have them whisper back if they feel like it is broadly useful. You can do all sorts of fun stuff with this. You can make sure that one particular person hears an insult they need to hear. You can flirt with people. You can discuss something very secret that you shouldn't be discussing in the open safely. You can also, more importantly, get somebody's attention in tense or otherwise iffy situations without getting the wrong person's attention. Message is a very good, precise, long... The one problem with message is that you're often going to find that you're either close enough to actually whisper to somebody, or 120 feet isn't quite the range you're going to want. Message is a cantrip that I really like it, and it's often going to have it on hand. I don't think Gravel Spots actually has it, because thematically I didn't feel like it worked, yeah. But it is a spell that I would expect bards to consider and pick up. Other classes are going to get various levels of use out of it. You know, obviously the social casters, the warlock, and the bard are going to get the most use out of something like this. But it isn't the most crucial spell. It does not come up as often as I wish it would. Again, that shorter range really kind of kicks it in the ass a little bit. It's going to firmly sit in a D tier for being cool, but not coming up nearly as often as I wish it would. Not being as broadly useful as I wish it was. We're going to move on to Minor Illusion. Now, if there was there is only one other cantrip that I would call an iconic bard cantrip, and we'll get to that one. That's actually the last one on this cantrip list. We have Minor Illusion here, an illusion cantrip. Wouldn't it be fucking weird if it wasn't an illusion? Is a somatic and material component. You don't have to speak. You just have to wiggle your fingers and have a bit of fleece on hand. Oh, god damn it. Okay. Sorry about that. It takes one action. It travels up to 30 feet. It affects an area of a 5-foot cube that is the 3-dimensional version of a single square, effectively, in this game. So, one cube, one tile, for 1 minute. You create a sound or an image of an object within range that lasts for the duration. The illusion also ends if you dismiss it as an action or cast this spell again. If you create a sound, its volume can range from a whisper to a scream. It can be your voice, someone else's voice, a lion's roar, beating of drums, or any other sound you choose. The sound continues unabated throughout the duration, or you can make discrete sounds at different times before the spell ends. If you create an image of an object, such as a chair, muddy footprints, or a small chest, it must be no larger than a 5-foot cube. The image can't create sound, light, smell, or any other sensory effect if you create an image. Physical interaction with the image reveals it to be an illusion because things can pass through it. If a creature uses its action to examine the sound or image, the creature can determine that it is an illusion with a successful intelligence and investigation check against your spell save DC. If the creature discerns the illusion for what it is, the illusion becomes faint to the creature. Minor Illusion is amazing. Absolutely ridiculous, fantastic spell, iconic for bards, instant S tier. You can do so many things with this spell. This is one of the pieces of just like stage magic. You can do almost anything with this spell. Being able to use just about any sound being able to create just about any object you want. Sure, it's got a size limit. That's why this is Minor Illusion, but to sort of highlight the power of this spell, which it might not seem so great. This last effect, the creature uses its action to examine it, and if they discern it for what it is, with that action, the illusion becomes faint. If somebody does that to something, like say you make an illusion of yourself to distract a guard, or like lure someone off of you, and they discern what it is. Yeah, you can just cast it again, and then they have to rediscern the new illusion when you create another illusion. So you can just recreate the same illusion and force them to determine that one's fake as well. You can play all sorts of mind games with this spell. You can set up just about any scenario you want. Make just about anything. Well, okay, it takes a lot of effort to set up just about any scenario you want or make anything you want happen. But this is one of those spells where, yeah, your imagination is the upper limit on this thing. If you can contrive a situation by having or creating an object or a sound, this spell will just do everything for you. Additionally, as it's a cantrip, it costs you nothing. It only takes an action to cast. It lasts for a full minute. It does not take concentration, meaning that while it's going on, you can be using things like dancing lights to enhance the vibe of your illusion. You could use you could use the next cantrip on this list to augment it. Minor Illusion has incredibly broad amount of applications, especially for a bard. Honorable mention goes to Illusionist Wizard, who also gets to do fun things with Minor Illusion, but you know, the difference between a bard and an Illusionist Wizard is an Illusionist Wizard is kind of a creep. So we're going to move on to the next one of the all-stars of cantrips. Loot as quick as possible, make an illusion of a full chest. Yeah, that's actually, yeah, that's a very good use of it, is you can swipe a thing and then make an illusion of that thing where it's at. Especially if you have rogue subclasses and you can swipe things as a bonus action. Do a quick switch. Arcane Trickster loves that trick. Here we're on to Prestidigitation, one of the all-stars of cantrips. You'll see why pretty quickly. You'll see really quickly why Prestidigitation is really good. It's part of a family of cantrips I often call the Swiss Army knives, or the all-stars. It is a transmutation cantrip that requires you be able to speak and move your hands, so verbal somatic. It takes one action, reaches up to 10 feet, and lasts up to an hour, depending on what you do. This spell is a minor magical trick that novice spellcasters use for practice. You create one of the following magical effects within range. So this is a cantrip that does 6 different things. It is 6 cantrips in one. The other cantrips that are like this are Druidcraft and Thaumaturgy, and there's like a demon-y one, I forget what it's called, but there is a collection of these that just do a bunch of small utility things. Prestidigitation allows you to create an instantaneous, harmless sensory effect, such as a shower of sparks, a puff of wind, faint musical notes, or an odd odor. Useful for making yourself look cool, or enhancing a situation, enhancing a performance. You know, sky's the limit, really. Instantaneously light or snuff out a candle, torch, or small campfire. The small campfire is the important part, although candle or torch is nice, as you can skip all sorts of survival checks to start fires in the cold and wet. Because you can just, boop. You can actually use Prestidigitation to play the Zelda jingle when you open a chest, it's true. Additionally, or, I should say not additionally, or you can instantaneously clean or soil an object, no larger than 1 cubic foot. This is another of those situations where it's sky's the limit again. The good spells in this game are the ones that let you really flex your imagination, I feel, because they're not just useful in combat or in prescribed situations, but they're all sorts of fun. Being able to soil an object has been a point of contention as to what exactly it means in players, in discussion of this cantrip. Oh, I'm accidentally overlapping windows and I didn't notice. I'm sorry. Move Prestidigitation. I'll move the spreadsheet down a little bit. That'll fix that problem. There we go. Just down in the corner there. So, prestidigitation, the soiling effect, has been used to mean all sorts of things throughout the months, years that this spell has been out and worded like this. Anywhere from literally covering something in soil, dirt, to making someone pee their pants, conjuring pee in someone's pants. That has been an argument I've heard for it, and it's a bad argument. I would not recommend using that unless you're absolutely 100% sure it's a funny joke. That is a valid interpretation, unfortunately. All sorts of different things you can use. I remember having someone step in fake dog dew with this spell once. Just to give an idea of the different uses you can use out of the soil thing. You can also make something nasty smelling so that people don't want to pick it up, stuff like that. You can chill, warm, or flavor up to 1 cubic foot of non-living material for 1 hour. You have a microwave in your pocket, effectively. You can heat up cold food, cool down hot food or drinks, flavor up to a cubic foot of non-living material. The flavor part can be used for very evil shit. Mostly for just getting people to eat poison and stuff. You can also use it to make your bad cooking taste okay. many useful applications. Yeah, you can if you are some kind of weird British wizard, clean the poop out of your pants with the clean an object option. Being able to clean yourself off without having to lug around a bar of soap is useful, but it's so convenient that there is a joke in my group that people who use prestidigitation to clean themselves instead of taking a proper bath just smell like chemical-ass body spray all the time, like Axe or something. Common problem among wizards. You can make a color, a small mark, or a symbol appear on an object or a surface for an hour. Just graffiti, anything. Get your way through a maze more easily. All sorts of things. And you can create a non-magical trinket or an illusory image that can fit in your hand and that lasts until the end of your next turn. Which, the most interesting... There are a lot of interesting uses for this last effect. It's probably one of the more niche, but one player I had when playing in a sort of magical detective agency campaign used this as a way to show objects to people when asking them. Like, hey, have you seen this cursed dagger? Create a replica of said cursed dagger. Or little pictures of people. Lots of creative use with this one. Prestidigitation, like I said, one of the all-stars in Easy S. Always take this cantrip. Pretty much every bard should take this cantrip. There's something for everybody. It's loads of fun. You're just gonna miss out if you don't take it. Next up, we got Thunderclap. Give me just a moment here. Thunderclap is an evocation cantrip. It's also one of your only combat cantrips. It just requires a somatic component, meaning you just have to be able to move, like clapping your hands, something like that. It invokes a saving throw. It takes 1 action to cast. It has a range of 5 feet, and it goes off instantly. Our music now is associated with Nightmare Crafting Golem system. Oh, just you wait. I'm going back to Legend of Mana at some point. We're gonna do hard mode, and we're gonna do Nightmare Crafting Golems. So, with this spell, you create a burst of thunderous sound that can be heard up to 100 feet away, so no sneaking. Each creature within range other than you must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or take 1d6 thunder damage. This spell damage scales as every cantrips, so it goes up by a die every 4 levels past the first. So, when you reach 5th level, when you reach 11th. Important thing to note about scaling cantrips is they are in many ways weapons. They scale very similarly to the way a number of attacks scale. and such that they scale based on your character level, not your class level, when you reach 5th level, not when you reach 5th Bard level. So multi-class characters really like cantrips. This is why Grovel Spots actually does have Thunderclap, right here. Thunderclap as a cantrip is probably not amazing. You can friendly fire with it, obviously, as it hits everything around you. It's very loud, so you're not going to be sneaking with it in any way, shape, or form. It's going to instantly alert pretty much everybody that you are there and you are doing things. However, it is a very favorable kind of AoE area of effect, especially for bards. A personal burst. As a bard, you're not going to be spending your time standing next to other party members anyway. All of your stuff functions at a long range. And so you're free to move about the battlefield, and you're free to move around the area, and put yourself into whatever position you really need to be. And so, if you get surrounded, this is a good way to deal a bunch of damage. Additionally, it is thunder damage. Now, being a Constitution saving throw, while not the most common saving throw for enemies to for monsters to have at a high number, is a fairly consistently high number. What this means is you're not going to see a whole lot of, like, 20 Constitutions, but you are going to see a lot of 17s and 18s, meaning the chances of them passing the saving throw are higher than usual. It's not like a dexterity where it's going to be more of a coin flip. I'd say that Thunderclap is going to hit about 60 to 70% of the time. Obviously, depending on your saving throw. Once it gets high enough, this becomes a lot more useful anyway. Thunder damage is a very favorable kind of damage. I'm going to briefly nerd out about damage types. Thunder damage is one of the quote-unquote primary damage types in this game. You have weapon damage types, which are bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing. And you have the energetic damage types, of which thunder is one of the core primary ones of fire, cold, lightning, and acid and thunder are the top five, are the primary five, the elemental five. Thunder taking the place of sound or sort of vibration. Very, very few things resist thunder damage, and immunity to thunder damage is hard to get. It's sort of like the physical equivalent of force damage, which we'll might talk about. I think. I'm pretty sure we'll get to talk about a force damage spell. Thunder damage is a great damage type. However, this is a combat cantrip. As a bard, you are in a unique position among classes to be very good at nipping combat in the bud when you don't want to fight. You have a lot of options for either running away, dispelling a fight entirely by like going invisible, or like charming the enemies. You're a great negotiator. So combat cantrips take up slots that something like Friends or Minor Illusion could be sitting in. Additionally, it is not a great combat cantrip. Even though you're a bard, not all bards want to get up close to enemies, and this only functions at effectively melee range, where while you're not the squishiest spellcaster, you're still not the sturdiest person in the world. Thunderclap is a middle-of-the-road... Actually, no, it's a D. It's slightly worse than middle of the road because there's one other combat cantrip that you're going to be using a lot more as a bard, and that is way more useful. It is not the next one. So True Strike. You might notice that on the tier list I have a special tier below F labeled True Strike. True Strike is the worst cantrip, possibly even the worst spell in all of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. True Strike is fucking garbage. Let's go over what True Strike is. True Strike is a divination cantrip that requires just the somatic component and concentration. It takes one action to cast, has a range of up to 30 feet, affects one creature, and lasts for 1 round. You extend your hand and point a finger at a target within range. Your magic gives you a brief insight into the target's defenses. On your next turn, you gain advantage on your first attack roll against the target, provided that the spell hasn't ended. So, this sounds very good. You spend a turn to gain advantage on your next attack. If you think about it for more than a moment, you'll see why that's a problem, because you could just make 2 different attacks on those 2 different turns and have much better chances of one of those attacks landing. Additionally, it takes your full action, which means that you're locking yourself out of doing pretty much anything else that turn in order to have better chances of hitting something next turn. And while most classes don't want to do this, as a bard, you have better things you could be doing. You could also be tossing out a debuff that gets you advantage on attacks against that target anyway, but we'll get to those. It's really the action economy that kills this spell. It's just not better than making 2 attacks, and once you start getting extra attacks if you want to be attacking, this spell is an active detriment, as you have to make an attack action to get those extra attacks. There is, however, one circumstance under which True Strike undergoes a transformation. It's not for bards, though. So we're going to put True Strike down here in the True Strike tier, where only True Strike lives because it's just really bad. There's one situation under which True Strike is great, and it's Rogue again. And it is, in fact, the Thief subclass of Rogue. Thief subclass at 3rd level gets the feature called Fast Hands. Starting at 3rd level, you can use the bonus action granted by Cunning action to make a Dexterity Sleight of Hand check. You can then, to make a Dexterity Sleight of Hand check, use Thieves' Tools to disarm a trap or open a lock, or take the Use an Object action. Use an Object is an action that applies to consumable items and tools, one of which are scrolls. If you have scrolls of True Strike, you can use Fast Hands to use True Strike as a bonus action. And as a rogue, if you have advantage on attacks, you get your sneak attack. Meaning that True Strike, in scroll form, in the hands of a thief, is almost game-breaking. Almost, because you can effectively guarantee sneak attack on anything you want. However, scrolls are still kind of an expensive consumable to be blowing like that. And there's better things you can do with that bonus action anyway. True Strike, we really do hate you. Garbage cantrip. So now we're on to the final Bard cantrip that we have listed here. I believe the latest, the Fizbin's book added some, but like, fucking whatever. Added like the sword magic to Bard spell list, but we'll worry about that when Hellfreeze is over or something. Just a moment. It's really drying out my throat. We have Vicious Mockery. Vicious Mockery is an enchantment cantrip, and probably, before I go into its properties, this is the iconic Bard cantrip. This is the Bard cantrip. This is also your best combat option if you are not a weapon using Bard. Vicious Mockery is an enchantment cantrip. It only requires verbal components, so you can use it while tied up as long as your mouth is free. It's great. It invokes a saving throw, it takes 1 action, has a range of 60 feet, targets 1 creature, and is instantaneous. Oh, sorry. I haven't had to read so many things in one stretch for a while, so let me just wet my whistle again. Coffee's good. You unleash a string of insults laced with subtle enchantments at a creature you can see within range. If the target can hear you, though it need not understand you, It must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or take 1d4 psychic damage and have disadvantage on the next attack roll it makes before the end of its next turn. And then the spell's damage increases as cantrips do. Vicious Mockery is pretty good. It is iconic for bards. It's flavorful and wonderful, and there's so many places you can use this. There are tons of applications for this in terms of if you want to hurt people. You know, it does only do one thing, and we don't particularly like cantrips that only do one thing. But that thing it does is pretty fantastic. Being able to tag a wisdom saving throw, which is not the highest saving throw among monsters. The average is around fairly lowish. To tag a wisdom saving throw and force not only some psychic damage, which is kind of a whatever damage type. A lot of creatures are either just outright immune to or resist psychic damage, but when it works really well. And have disadvantage on the next attack roll it makes before the end of its next turn. That's the big part. You can force someone to roll bad as long as you hit them with this. And this, it plays to Bard's strengths in combat, because no matter what flavor of Bard you are, you're going to want to be sort of controlling. You're going to want to be picking your targets and supporting your party members, your friends. And even if you're on your own, this benefits you. If you're fighting in a one-on-one, this gets you instant advantage as you get to do a little bit of that Guybrush Threepwood insult sword fighting with people. It's a good, fun cantrip that, while not perfect, is... If you're playing Bard, you're probably going to take this, because, like, why else would you play a Bard? Or why else... Yeah, why wouldn't you take this if you're playing a Bard? Holy moly, that took way longer than I thought it would to get through just the cantrips. This is why I this is why I said I'm only doing Bard spells. Because yeah, there's a lot of spells. So next up we've got our first level spell, Animal Friendship. Animal Friendship is an enchantment spell that costs a first level spell slot. From here on out, spells cost spell slots. Resources you get as you level up. If we go over to Grabblespots here, we can see the Grabblespots has some spell slots. Yep, first level, second level. You don't tend to get more than 4 first level spell slots, although there are ways to replenish spell slots while you're out and about instead of having to take a rest. It's important to note. From here on, we will be spending resources. Oh, yes, for those who haven't seen, I can actually take a moment between to flip over to the party art real quick. Take a quick look for a couple seconds here. Just absolutely fantastic party art commissioned by the DM. Amazing artist. I forgot their username. I'll have to go grab that at some point. Oops. Absolutely fantastic party art. Animal Friendship. I'm going to tell you this one's not gonna... Rikarini. That's what it is. Shoutouts to Rikarini for the party art of the whole group. Animal Friendship is a first level enchantment spell. It requires a verbal component, a somatic component, and a morsel of food as a material component. Although, you know how we feel about a material components at this point. Provokes a saving throw, 1 action, 30 feet range on one creature, and lasts for up to a day. This spell lets you convince a beast that you mean it no harm. Choose a beast that you can see within range. It must see and hear you. If the beast's intelligence is 4 or higher, that is to say, if it's sentient and capable of reason, the spell fails. Otherwise, the beast must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be charmed by you for the spell's duration. You or one of your companions harms the target the spell ends. Make a friend out of any animal. Just charm just about any animal. It's a good spell. It's a fun spell. You can Pied Piper your way through life with this. You cast this spell using a spell slot of second or higher level. You can affect 1 additional beast or 1 slot level above first. Meaning once you hit about like 3rd and 4th level spells, you can shut down entire random encounters that include groups of beasts like wolves or tigers or something that you wouldn't really want to fight. While you're gonna have your druid, if your party is a druid or a ranger, they're gonna have this as a bard. It's always fun to have. It enables a lot of, if nothing else, cute shit, fun times. Make an animal buddy. It's not an animal companion, but you don't want it to fight for you anyway. You just want to make an animal friend. Fun spell. Bane is our next first level spell. This is a first level enchantment spell. It has the full spectrum of components, verbal, somatic, material, and concentration. You're going to need a drop of blood or any number of ways to bypass material components, as usual. I'm going to stop mentioning that. Requires concentration, invokes a saving throw, one action, goes up to 30 feet, hits up to 3 creatures for 1 minute. Up to 3 creatures of your choice that you can see within range must make charisma saving throws. Whenever a target that fails this saving throw makes an attack, roll, or a saving throw before the spell ends, the target must roll a d4 and subtract the number rolled from the attack roll or saving throw. Bane is the opposite of Bless. When you cast a spell using a spell slot of 2nd or higher level, you can target 1 additional creature for each slot level above first. This, from here on out, I guess I should mention that spells that cost spell slots tend to scale. You can slip them into higher level spell slots to turn them into higher level spells, and this describes what happens when it's a higher level spell. You target more creatures. That's usually what happens, is it expands the AoE or it increases the amount of damage it does by a die step or 2. Or a die number or 2. Bane is a fantastic spell. I'm gonna say that a lot, because there's a lot of fantastic spells on the Bard spell list. Bane is a great spell. It does take concentration, which means that it's gonna conflict with a lot of the things you do as a Bard. But it plays to Bards' strengths of controlling the battlefield and helping their friends. This sort of functions in a similar capacity as Vicious Mockery, and in fact, if you Bane someone and then the next turn Vicious Mockery them, or get yourself 2 actions thanks to haste or something, they're not hitting anything with disadvantage and -1 d4. That said, as a Bard, there is a Bard College, the College of Eloquence, which is an expansion book Bard, unfortunately, whose class features effectively allow them to do this as a class feature. Bane is good. It is fairly expensive for what it is, though. You spend 1 spell slot on 1 encounter to slightly make them a little bit weaker. Firmly a middle-of-the-road spell that you might find some uses out of. It might be thematically appropriate. Gravel spots probably should have this, with the insult bard thing going on. Charm Person. This is another iconic bard spell, much in the same way as Vicious Mockery was. Because Bane is sort of like clerics get it. I believe druids also get it. Don't quote me on that. Charm Person is a first level enchantment spell. It requires verbal and somatic components, so again, you have to be able to speak and move. Provokes a saving throw, takes your action, has a range of 30 feet on 1 creature for an hour. You attempt to charm a humanoid you see within range. This is important. This is, much like with Animal Friendship, it's targeting a creature type. The last creature type was beast. This one is humanoid. That is a specific type of person. Unfortunately, it does have real unfortunate implications with things like giants who are immune to it, so you cannot charm person a giant even though they are sapient people with their own civilization, because they are not people. It's a little bit unfortunate. You attempt to charm a humanoid you see within range. It must make a wisdom saving throw, and does so with advantage if you or your companions are fighting it. If it fails the saving throw, it is charmed by you until the spell ends, or until you or your companions do anything harmful to it. The charmed creature regards you as a friendly acquaintance. When the spell ends, the creature knows it was charmed by you. When you cast this spell, using a spell slot of 2nd level or higher, you can target 1 additional creature for each slot level higher. They must be within 30 feet of each other when you target them. Meaning they can move at some point, I guess. Charm Person is an iconic bard spell. It's what you dump friends for. Once you start having a regular flow of first level spell slots, as it's friends without the downside, effectively. Not quite. I mean, Charm lets you bypass needing to lie to people or persuade them to begin with. They just sort of trust what you say. It lets you make friends with people, lets you bypass encounters, lets you deal with guards, places you're not supposed to be, lets you... There are so many things you can do with Charm Person. As there's a person, and they can do something for you, this is the spell for you. It's social engineering the spell. It doesn't even make people mad, although they might be mad if they know they were charmed by you, depending on how much they actually like you afterwards, like how likable you are, effectively. Charm Person is an A rank spell. I can't see going without it for long, if going without it at all. The only reason you would get rid of it or not take it is if your charisma is so ridiculous you don't need to charm people. Or you have it on a magic item. I believe Gravelspots does not have it, as I got rid of it because his charisma is really high and he had Charm Person on item for a while. Next up is Comprehend Languages, a first level divination spell, which has a verbal, somatic, and material component. It also has a tag, which is in the components section, that is very rare for bard spells. And that is the ritual tag. Ritual spells are special in that you don't have to cast them with a spell slot. You can ignore the normal casting requirements of a ritual spell if you're capable of casting ritual spells, and instead just spend 10 minutes to cast it as a ritual spell. Effectively, you can cast it for free by spending a ton of time, meaning you have to securely be out of combat and out of danger. That is what a ritual means. Otherwise, you can, cast it like normal, spending a first level spell slot, verbal, somatic, material components, one action on yourself for an hour. For the duration, you understand the literal meaning of any spoken language that you hear. You also understand any written language that you see, but you must be touching the surface on which the words are written. It takes about 1 minute to read one page of text this way. The spell does not decode secret messages in a text or glyph, such as an arcane sigil, that aren't part of a written language. Meaning, this would decode Pig Latin, but it does not, solve cryptographic ciphers. You get what I mean? Comprehend Languages is a fantastic spell. It's mostly because it's really cheap and it's a ritual. Rituals are all very, very good spells, and the only downside as a bard to taking Comprehend Languages is that later you can replace it with tongues, and you have kind of a tight spell list. So if you have a wizard, they typically want to be the... wizards and clerics are typically the people who want to have rituals because they just have a much bigger selection of spells. The important thing about a ritual is you don't need to have it prepared to cast it as a ritual, and unfortunately, bards only have prepared spells. That is to say, they don't interact with the prepared mechanics at all. So rituals aren't as great for bards. Still a great spell, and of course, it is right up your alley if you are a bard. This is a good time for me to mention that, if you have any spells you want me to, talk about, or if you have any opinions to express, you want to differ with me, if you have a different opinion on something, if I get something wrong, if I miss something, yell at me in the chat. Bring it up in the chat. This is interactive or something. I'm not just doing this. Right. Got distracted there for a minute, didn't I? Oh, fuck. Sorry. I just spilled a bunch of coffee on my mouse. Should be fine, though. Didn't get any in it, just on it. Should be off. Next up is Cure Wounds. First level evocations, but I gotta speed this the fuck up, jeez. First level evocation spell, verbal somatic components. It is a healing spell that takes one action, touches a creature, and happens instantaneously. Heals someone for some hit points. Takes your action, heals someone with some hit points. You have to be touching them, but that's about it. It's pretty straightforward. This is a situational spell. See, normally, in any other game, having a healing spell would be fantastic. And actually, I do have Cure Wounds on Gravel Spots. But it is important to note that in Dungeons & Dragons, healing people in exchange for an action is kind of really slow. This is most useful out of combat. And as taking up a whole action that's your whole turn. And healing isn't super valuable. Due to the way death and dying works, you only really care if you fall below 1 HP. And any amount of healing will pick somebody up. There is another healing spell later on in this list that is just straight up better than Cure Wounds for bards, but that does not mean that Cure Wounds is a bad or below average spell. It's just the staple heal. It's the most basic one, but it's a little bit slow for those of us that like to sing and dance around. It does avoid conflicting with bonus action economy, but it's alright. Next up, we've got Detect Magic, another ritual spell. This is a first level divination spell that has the verbal somatic and concentration tags as well as ritual. It works only on yourself. It gives you a 30-foot radius and lasts for 10 minutes. For the duration, you sense the presence of magic within 30 feet of you. If you sense magic in this way, you can use your action to see a faint aura around any visible creature or object in the area that bears magic, and you will learn its school of magic. This spell can penetrate most barriers, but is blocked by, similar to Whisper, 1 foot of stone, 1 inch of common metal, a thin sheet of lead, or 3 feet of wood or dirt. Same weird little loophole is that it does not it just goes right through precious metals. It's just weird. But it is due to the fact that it lists common metal here as one thing that blocks it. It can go through precious metals. Detect Magic is just good. It's a good utility spell. You're probably not going to take it as a bard because, like, that 10-minute... That concentration's rough. It's a ritual. And sensing the presence of magic when you're not an expert in the arcane is firmly whatever. It can help you in a pinch, like every spell on this list. It has a very good situational use, but... in a party, someone else is going to have this spell, usually, and you might get use out of it. Next up, we've got Disguise Self, a first-level illusion spell that requires verbal and somatic components, only works on yourself, and lasts for an hour. Takes your action, obviously. Well, I guess I shouldn't say obviously, it could be bonus. Make yourself, including your clothing, armor, weapons, and other belongings on your person, look different until the spell ends or until you use your action to dismiss it. You can seem 1 foot shorter or taller, can appear thin, fat, or in between. You can't change your body type, so you must adopt a form that has the same basic arrangement of limbs. Otherwise, the extent of the illusion is up to you. Changes wrought by the spell fail to hold up to physical inspection. For accident, you use this spell to add a hat. Objects pass through the hat, and anyone who touches it would feel nothing or feel your head and hair. Use the spell to appear thinner. The hand of someone who reaches out to touch you would bump into you while seemingly still in midair. Stuff like that. To discern that you are disguised, a creature can use his action to inspect your appearance and must succeed on an intelligence check against your spell save DC. As a spell, this is useful for illusion wizards. As a bard, you have ways to be good at disguising yourself. You will probably find use for this. Is a firmly middle-of-the-road spell that doesn't come up as often as you might think, just because, well, disguise kits are a thing, being proficient with the ability to disguise yourself is a thing, and it dovetails with this well. They work with each other fairly well. But mostly you'd use this to replace your deception check to disguise yourself with your spell save DC, which as a bard may or may not be better. Probably not better, so it's going to be firmly middle of the road. You'll like it if you have it and need it, but it's whatever. Next up, we have a non-core spell. I believe that's the first non-core spell. A first level enchantment spell called Dissonant Whispers. Requires a verbal component, has a range of 60 feet, provokes a saving throw, and it goes up to 1 action. Or uses 1 action. You whisper a discordant melody that only one creature of your choice within range can hear, racking it with terrible pain. The target must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, it takes 3d6 psychic damage and must immediately use its reaction, if available, to move as far as its speed allows away from you. The creature doesn't move into obviously dangerous ground, such as fire or a pit. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage and doesn't have to move away. A deafened creature automatically succeeds on this save. You can cast this spell to increase the damage it deals. This sucks. It's just a damage spell that makes someone move away from you. Not particularly handy. There's a couple of uses for this, but spending your whole action in an entire first level spell slot and slotting this in as a bard, which is rough, just to hurt someone, it is a fairly substantial amount of psychic damage. 3d6 is quite high for a first level spell. Comparable with some very other good damage spells, such as Chromatic Orb and Guiding Bolt, but you're a bard casting a damage spell. You could swing a weapon at that. You have Vicious Mockery that doesn't cost you resources. Dissonant Whispers is, I believe, our first E tier. It is not completely useless, but you're gonna take it and you're gonna be really excited because you get to do madness magic stuff, and you're gonna realize that this spell is for warlocks, is what's going to happen. Next up, we have Earth Tremor, another Xanathar spell. This is a first level evocation spell that requires verbal and somatic components, provokes a saving throw, costs your action, goes up to 10 feet, and is instant. Cause a tremor in the ground within range. Each creature other than you in that area must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, a creature takes 1d6 bludgeoning damage and is knocked prone. If the ground in that area is loose earth or stone, it becomes difficult terrain until cleared, with each 5-foot diameter portion requiring at least 1 minute to clear by hand. This spell is actually quite good. Dealing some damage, as usual, kind of garbage. But being able to not only deal magical weapon damage, this does bludgeoning damage. I call it weapon damage, magical physical damage, as it were. This bypasses a lot of resistances that certain enemies might have, as a lot of bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage resistance specifically allows magical, that is to say spell-based or magical equipment-based damage to go through, and or functions only on weapon damage, like we saw earlier with Blade Ward. So that's better than it seems, and knocking things prone is one of the most powerful status effects you can inflict on something. However, it's only instant. It does create difficult terrain, but difficult terrain kind of actually hurts you as much as it hurts the enemies. In all respects, Earth Tremor is a D-grease. No, actually, this is a C. This is a C spell. As far as the instant damage spells that don't really have super great lingering effects, this one at least knocks people prone. And but that first level spell slot's kind of expensive for what it does. Next up, we have Fairy Fire. Fairy Fire is a first level evocation spell. Requires verbal component, but it does require concentration. It evokes a saving throw, takes your action, has a 60-foot range in a 20-foot cube, and lasts for a minute. Each object in a 20-foot cube within range is outlined in blue, green, or violet light, your choice. Already a big benefit. Any creature in the area when the spell is cast is also outlined in light if it fails a dexterity saving throw. For the duration, objects and affected creatures shed dim light in a 10-foot radius. Any attack roll against an affected creature or object has advantage if the attacker can see it, and the affected creature or object can't benefit from being invisible. Fairy Fire is very good. Now, you are going to, if there's a druid in your party, there's a good chance that they have this, and they're going to want to use it because they don't have a lot of first level spells they're going to want to use in combat, and they can freely switch things in and out to grab this, but this is not a bad choice at all. Being able to hit a 20-foot cube and just light everything up, dispel invisibility, and more importantly, grant advantage on anything you tag, for a full minute, that's 10 rounds of combat. That is 10 attacks with advantage. possibly more if your friends are making extra attacks. Fairy Fire is a great debuff, excellent battlefield spell, and also has uses outside of combat. If you're trying to detect someone who's sneaking around, if you're actually just trying to see an area, this can create a lot of points of light, as 10-foot radius light is not minor. Fairy Fire is very good. You're not always going to take it because someone else might have it, because it's a very good spell that several classes get, but if they don't have it, consider it. It's quite good. Next up, we have one of the best spells in the game, Featherfall. This is a first-level transmutation spell that requires a verbal and material component, a small feather or a piece of down. It is our first reaction speed spell. This spell uses your reaction, which is a resource you have that only activates when triggered, and you can only do one of them a turn. Certain class features and mechanics will trigger reactions. The most common reaction is an attack of opportunity, when an opponent leaves a threatened square that is a square that you're adjacent to while you're wielding a weapon and they're hostile. So this uses your reaction. Up to 5 creatures for 1 minute and a range of 60 feet. You choose up to 5 falling creatures within range. So this triggers when anyone within range is falling. Falling creatures' rate of descent, that includes yourself, by the way. Rate of descent slows to 60 feet per round until the spell ends. If the creature lands before the spell ends, it takes no falling damage and can land on its feet, and the spell ends for that creature. If anything that knocks you off, of anything, Featherfall saves your ass. If you want to be dramatic and jump off of high places, Featherfall saves your ass. If you want to do something particularly dangerous, Featherfall saves your ass. If your friends do something that's particularly dangerous that involves a lot of, like, say, climbing a dragon or riding a flying dragon, or climbing a tall tree, getting thrown into the air, getting hit by reverse gravity, Featherfall is an amazing spell. It helps you against environmental hazards, it helps you against dungeon traps, it helps you in combat. Featherfall is an A-rank spell. You want this spell in your party. You aren't always going to be the person to have it. First level spell slots, again, still fairly expensive for a bard, and again, your spell list is narrow, so if you're not getting use out of this spell, it's just kind of cluttering it up. But amazing to have in the back pocket. Next up is Healing Word, a first level evocation spell that has only a verbal component. It is also one of our, I believe that actually is the first bonus action spell. Healing Word affects one creature, 60-foot range, instantaneous. Healing Word is bonus action ranged cure wounds. It is half as powerful, but as we described earlier, any amount of hit points is going to get someone up off the floor. And that's what Healing Word excels at. You can still take your turn because it only takes your bonus action. You can just pick someone up if they've fallen down, or if they're at really low health, you can heal them. At higher levels, the low power of this spell means nothing because you're going to get a punchy amount out of your abilities, your spellcasting ability modifier. +4 or +5 HP, even at higher levels, can be significant. Healing Word is just, for bards, a much better Cure Wounds. Now, other classes have ways to power up Cure Wounds in ways that don't power up Healing Word, and when you start healing huge amounts of hit points with Cure Wounds becomes a lot better. But for the most part, as a bard, Healing Word is A+, really worth taking every time you can. Next up, we've got Heroism, a first level enchantment spell that has verbal somatic components, requires concentration, takes up your action, requires you to touch one creature, and lasts for a minute. A willing creature you touch is imbued with bravery. Until the spell ends, the creature is immune to being frightened and gains temporary hit points equal to your spellcasting ability modifier at the start of each of its turns. When the spell ends, the target loses any remaining temporary hit points. When you upcast it, you can target additional creatures. Heroism's great. Heroism's a really good spell. It's not like a must-take at all times. If you're a Glamour Bard, like Gravel Spots, it basically conflicts with your class features, as it does effectively a worse version. But recurring temporary hit points every turn can be life-saving early on, and just utterly game-breaking in some cases, as temporary hit points are always deducted first when you're hit, and early on things are hitting you for like 3, 4, 5 damage. Being able to have a layer of 3 or 4 temporary hit points to soak those hits, those few hits that do get through, real good. You can put this on your party's Beef Boy, you can put this on the Wizard, you can... this spell has wide applications, but it's fairly expensive, again, for what it is. It's fairly slow for what it is, and this is the big thing. Frightened immunity is not that amazing. A lot of things grant immunity to frightening, and spending your concentration on heroism could mean giving up your concentration on like a really good debuff or something. There's still a lot it fights with in terms of action economy and concentration economy. I've got it on Gravel Spots. It's good. Don't get me wrong, but it's a solid... You know what? I'm going to put it in a B. I've convinced myself that I was a little harsh on it. It goes into the B tier. It's good. It's not must-take, but it's good. Next up, we got Identify as a first-level divination spell that is our first spell that requires a costly material component. Thankfully, it does not consume the component. This requires you to have a pearl worth at least 100 GP on you. You cannot bypass this with a focus or the spellcasting component pouch. You have to have 100 GP worth of pearl. And it has to be a pearl. You have to match this requirement. Once you have it, though, this is a spell that costs 1 minute to cast, or 10 minutes as a ritual. You touch one object and instantly know everything about it. One of the most useful spells in the game. However, as a bard, you do not want to have to take this spell. You're going to have class features that let you figure things out about items with, like, legend lore and the ability to sort of just use your skills on that. And if you have a wizard and they don't have this spell, something is genuinely wrong with them. So Identify is going to go in the C tier, the middle of the road tier, because while it's good, as a bard, you are not going to be taking it most of the time. If you don't have a wizard, you might take it. Next up, we have Illusory Script, a first-level illusion spell. Excuse me. You write on parchment paper. Sorry, I should read over. This is you need somatic. You need to be able to move your hands. You need a lead-based ink worth at least 10 GP, which the spell consumes. So every time you cast this, you are spending 10 gold pieces, which can be pretty substantial at first level, and as first level spell slot. It can be cast as a ritual, which means you can bypass the spell slot requirement for 10 minutes. It costs 10 minutes normally. You have to touch the object, and it lasts for 10 days. You write on parchment paper or some other suitable writing material and imbue it with a potent illusion that lasts for the duration. To you and any creatures you designate when you cast the spell, the writing appears normal, written in your hand, and conveys whatever meaning you intended when you wrote the text. To all others, the writing appears as if it were written by an unknown or magical script that is unintelligible. Alternatively, you can cause the writing to appear to be an entirely different message written in a different hand and language, although the language must be one you know. Should the spell be dispelled, the original script and illusion both disappear. A creature with true sight can read the hidden message. So, Illusory Script is an interesting spell that I'm going to talk about for a little bit, because on the surface, this seems like a spell you would use in like a scenario or an adventure where you are just trying to where you're just trying to sort of sneak a message around, you're being monitored or something. However, there's an unintentional twist to this spell's usage. The alternative use allows you to make the writing appear in an entirely different message written in a different hand and language, as long as you know the language. That means the Illusory Script is a shortcut for forgery. You can forge any document with this, as long as you know what hand you want to make it in and what language you want to put it in. This is one of those sneaky spells that you look at it and it's like, oh, that's kind of a niche use, and then you realize that the alternative use, although it's supposed to obviously lend to the flavor of the spell, also allows that unintended delicious little, just make it appear to be whatever official document you want it to be for everyone that isn't you. And now you forged something for the cost of 10 GP and a first level spell slot, which might not be worth it still. 10 GP early on is really expensive, and as I keep saying, spell choices are pretty tight for bards. The spell slot requirement can be bypassed as it's a ritual, but that having to choose it, that can be a problem. For that reason, Illusory Script goes down here. Even with the ability to forge all sorts of documents, you have other ways of forging all sorts of documents, and it's just kind of a rough and expensive way to do it. It's one of those situations where if you were a wizard, that would be a lot better, but you have better choices. Next up, we have Longstrider. Longstrider is a first level transmutation spell. Requires you to move your hands and your mouth. Verbal somatic. Pinch of dirt. Touch one creature. For an hour, give them 10 feet extra speed. It's not very good. 10 feet of extra speed might make the difference in niche situations, but they can always just spin their action to run and double their speed for that turn. There are very few situations where Longstrider is particularly good. In fact, it's about as bad as spending your turn to get one turn of resistance, because resistance is at least broadly applicable. Sure, extra movement speed can be useful in a lot of situations, but you're choosing one spell that you're only going to use to increase speed by 10 feet for an hour. It feels bad time. Longstrider sucks. Next up, we've got Silent Image. This is a first level illusion spell that requires verbal, somatic, material components, and also concentration. A bit of fleece, so who cares? It takes one action, has a 60-foot range, a 50-foot cube, and lasts for 10 minutes. This is Minor Illusion's big brother, or one of them. I don't actually think we're going to get to the other until... yeah, we'll see. You create the image of an object, creature, or other physical phenomenon that is no larger than a 15-foot cube. The image appears at a spot within range and lasts for the duration. It is purely visible. It is not accompanied by sound, smell, or other sensory effects. You can use your action to cause the image to move to any spot within range. As the image changes location, you can alter its appearance so its movements appear natural to the image. For example, if you create an image of a creature and move it, you can alter the image so it appears to be walking. Physical interaction with the image reveals it to be an illusion because things can pass through it. A creature that uses its action to examine the image can determine that it is an illusion with a successful intelligence investigation check against your spell save DC. If the creature discerns the illusion for what it is, the creature can see through the image. Slightly weaker than Minor Illusion in that one respect, in that if they see through it, you can't just freely recast the spell, as that is a full fucking first level spell slot. But Minor Illusion is an easy A. Silent Image is an easy A tier, as we love spells that allow you to just use your imagination for all sorts of wacky nonsense. You can create many... This is one of those spells that you can use to create scenes and scenarios as a bard that, you know, trick people into thinking things you want them to, or get them to give you money for a cool performance, or otherwise just engineer scenarios. Silent Image rules. Hard to go against it. Next up, we have a first level enchantment spell. This is one of the D&D staples, and if you know D&D at all, you know this is going right into the A tier. Verbal somatic material component. This is Sleep, a first level enchantment. Again, costless material component, we don't really care. It is a ranged spell attack that costs your action, goes 90 feet, hits a 20-foot sphere, and lasts for a minute. This spell sends creatures into a magical slumber. Roll 5d8. The total is how many hit points of creatures this spell can affect. Creatures within 20 feet of a point you choose within range are affected in ascending order of their current hit points, ignoring unconscious creatures. Starting with the creature that has the lowest hit points, each creature affected by the spell falls unconscious until the spell ends. They take damage or someone uses an action to wake them up. Subtract each creature's hit points from the total before moving on to the creature with the next lowest hit points. Oh. Okay. Alright. I will good manipulate. Okay. Subtract a creature's hit points must be equal to or less than the remaining total for that creature to be affected. Undead and creatures immune to being charmed aren't affected by sleep. And when you cast sleep using a slot of 2nd level or higher, roll an additional 2d8 for each level above first. Sleep is a weird spell in that it is the best 1st level damage. I didn't say that. It is the best magic action, or one of the best damage magic actions, as it is kind of a fake damage action. It effectively does way outscale damage for what it is at 5d8, but it has to completely KO a creature from their current hit points in order to put them to sleep. Putting things to sleep effectively takes them out entirely, though. And a lot of creatures have, like, especially, like, say, like, people have, like, 4 to 8 hit points, or, like, 16, and can easily be put to sleep by this magical action. Sleep is great. Sleep is a staple. Sleep is one of those magical actions that if you and another class that uses magical actions has, you're not going to feel like you're rubbing up against each other, because you're going to find different uses for it. It enables all sorts of things. It might seem like one that only functions in combat, but no, there's reasons to put people to sleep outside of fights all the time. Alright, so our next magical trick is going to be Speak with Animals. If you remember Animal Friendship, this is fairly similar. This is a 1st level divination magic. Oh, I didn't... Oh. Marked as complete. Yeah, okay. That's what I wanted to do. And I will go with that for the next 10 minutes, shall we say. So when the uptimer says 154, I will be able to say the S word again. It requires a verbal somatic component, can be used as ritual. One action on yourself for 10 minutes. You gain the ability to comprehend and verbally communicate with beasts for the duration. Again, we're targeting beasts, a creature type, so narrower use. The knowledge and awareness of many beasts is limited by their intelligence, but at minimum, beasts can give you information about nearby locations and monsters, including whatever they perceive or have perceived within the past day. You may have to be able to persuade a beast to perform a small favor for you at the DM's discretion. This allows you to have conversations with animals, and for that reason alone, it's a B tier. It is obviously, if you really want to go with, like, Speak with Animals and Animal Friendship, then you might want to consider being a ranger or a druid, but as a bard, this is another of those ones that you might just pick up, because I mean, who doesn't want to have a conversation with a fuzzy friend if you've got the spare spell choices? I'm sorry, I didn't say that word. The spare magical action choices, the spare tricks. I'm gonna have to spin the punishment wheel later. I'm gonna have to set up the punishment wheel, because I keep screwing up that manipulate. Next up, we've got Tasha's Hideous Laughter, which is a 1st level enchantment. This requires the full suite of verbal somatic material and concentration, although the material component I'm actually gonna go over here is tiny tarts and a feather that is waved in the air. You throw little pies at people and tickle them with a feather, or fake it. Requires concentration, though. Invokes a saving throw, takes your action, 30 feet range, 1 creature for 1 minute. A creature of your choice that you can see within range perceives everything as hilariously funny and falls into fits of laughter if this affects it. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or fall prone, becoming incapacitated and unable to stand up for the duration. A creature with an intelligence score of 4 or less isn't affected. The end of each of its turns, and each time it takes damage, the target can make another wisdom saving throw. The target has advantage on the saving throw if it's triggered by damage. On a success, the effect ends. Tasha's Hideous Laughter is one of your best choices as a bard. It's iconic, it's incredibly powerful. You knock someone down, which means that every attack against them is going to be at advantage, and they are incapacitated, meaning they are just out. They cannot do anything. They miss their turn, especially given they can't stand up, so they can only roll around on the ground to move. Tasha's Hideous Laughter is one of the most powerful lockdowns in the game. Why is Grease not on this list? This list is missing a few spells, a few magics. Is missing a few magics. I'm gonna have to give Grease a shot over. It was added to the bard list later. Tasha's is amazing, though. This is an S tier. You are always going to want this. You're always going to want access to this. It is perfectly on point for bards. It is made for bards. It is... Of the bard magical actions, not only is this one of the most iconic, but unlike the other really iconic ones, this one's super handy. When you want this, you want this. Useful outside of combat, too. Next up, we've got Thunder Wave, which is a first level evocation. Thunder Wave requires verbal and somatic components, invokes a saving throw, is one action, centered on yourself with a 15-foot cube of range and instantaneous. A wave of thunderous force sweeps out from you. Each creature with a 15-foot cube originating from you must make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, a creature takes 2d8 thunder damage and is pushed 10 feet away. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage and isn't pushed. In addition, unsecured objects that are completely within the area of effect are automatically pushed away, and the spell emits a thunderous boom out to 300 feet. This magical action is very good, and when you cast this magical action using a magical slot of second level or higher, the damage increases by 1d8 for each slot above first. This is a good version of Thunderclap. Thunderclap is kind of whatever in all respects because it is a weaker version of Thunder Wave that was added later to be a cantrip option. Thunder Wave is really good though because it pushes people back 10 feet, which means you can use it to shove people around, get yourself out of trouble. You can use it to smash objects that you might need to smash. This has uses outside of fights, which is why it's already better than Thunderclap. On the other hand, the uses for this spell are for this magical action are fairly narrow. I keep screwing up that manipulate. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna hold on to it for another couple minutes past what I said, just to make up for my screw-ups. This pushes people back, it smashes objects, it hurls objects. Unfortunately, it makes a lot of noise. It does do a favorable kind of damage, but this is more of an iconic wizard spell. Wizard magic. Wizards really love Thunder Wave. They make use of it a lot. It's one of the classic get me out of trouble magics for wizards. You might find uses for it, especially for pushing people into grease patches, but next up we've got Unseen Servant. This is not the last first level magic. I want to go over Grease, my favorite. This is Unseen Servant, which is a first level conjuration that requires the full bevy of components and is available as a ritual. However, the component doesn't cost any money, so who cares? It takes one action, has a range of 60 feet, covers one space, and lasts for 1 hour. This spell creates an invisible, mindless, shapeless, medium-sized force that performs simple tasks at your command until the magic ends. The servant springs into existence in an unoccupied space on the ground within range. It has 10 AC, 1 hit point, a strength of 2. It cannot attack. If it drops to 0 hit points, your magic ends. Once on each of your turns as a bonus action, you can mentally command this force to move up to 15 feet and interact with an object. The servant can perform simple tasks that a human servant could do, such as fetching things, cleaning, mending, folding clothes, lighting fires, serving food, and pouring wine. Once you give the command, the servant performs its task to the best of its ability until it completes the task, then waits for your next command. you command the servant to perform a task that would move it more than 60 feet away from you, the whole thing ends. Unseen Servant is telekinesis for really lazy people. It is a wizard-ass magical choice. It is also fairly bardy, but again, as a ritual, it eats into your chosen magical options, and then that can be a problem if you want to do other things. However, if you're in a social campaign, if you're sitting around at home a lot, or you're dealing with a lot of aristocrats, or you're living the high life, Unseen Servant is a quality of life magical option. While not amazing in most standard adventuring scenarios, it can still more or less be used like a slower, more intricate mage hand at worst. It's fine. Other people are going to probably make better use of Unseen Servant, but Unseen Servant is a nice, flavorful choice that I'm going to put in the B tier, because I like it. That's really it. It's because I like Unseen Servant. We're going to take a quick detour off of here to talk about my favorite magical option. Grease. Grease was added to the Bard spell list later, like a couple of spells, so this technically counts as a Bard's magical, the Bard magic list. So this technically counts as a Bard magic. This is a first level conjuration that has the full bevy of material components except for concentration, which is great. Just requires a little butter or something, but again, it doesn't cost anything. One action, 60-foot range, 10-foot square for 1 minute. If you've been watching the campaign up to this point, I think I used Grease in almost every single session. Slick Grease covers the ground in a 10-foot square centered on a point within range and turns it into difficult terrain for the duration. When the grease appears, each creature standing in its area must succeed on a dexterity saving throw or fall prone. A creature that enters the area or ends its turn there must also succeed on a dexterity saving throw or fall prone. Grease is simple and amazing. You code an area in grease, people fall down when they step on the grease. It does not go away for a full minute. It does not require concentration. You can put it anywhere. Grease effect, make the DM cry. Yes, your DM likes to put a lot of dudes in that are vulnerable to proning. This is so good. It's so good. Every class that can access this magical option wants it. It's very powerful. As a bard, you can use it for slapstick shenanigans. You can grease up an object that someone really wants to make it hard to hold on to. You can make difficult terrain. You can make people fall down. Go boom. Grease is funny as hell, and it's incredibly powerful. Nobody is immune to rolling bad on a dexterity saving throw and falling on their ass. And now we're on to our second level magical options. How much longer do I have to? Okay. Alright. Our second level magical options. I'm going to start going a little faster here, because as we get higher in the levels, they get more niche and less amazing. Oddly enough, they get more powerful, but they tend to get narrower in scope. So we have a second level enchantment, Animal Messenger. Is a ritual, requires all the components except for concentration. Targets one creature in 30 feet for your turn for 24 hours. It costs... By means of this spell, you use an animal to deliver a message. Choose a tiny beast you can see within range, such as a squirrel, a blue jay, or a bat. You can specify a location which you must have visited, and a recipient who has a general discretion, such as a man or woman dressed in the uniform of the town guard, or a red-haired dwarf wearing a pointy hat. You also speak a message of up to 25 words. Target beast travels the duration of the magical effect towards the specified location, covering about 50 miles per 24 hours for a flying messenger, or 25 miles for other animals. When it arrives, it delivers your message. The creature you described, replicating the sound of your voice, the messenger speaks only to a creature matching the description you gave, and if the messenger doesn't reach its destination before the magic ends, the message is lost, and the beast makes its way back to where you cast it. Animal Messenger fucking sucks. It's one of those magical options that you're going to get maybe one use out of an entire campaign, if that, and you might not even be the one to use it if you're a bard. It is one of those magical options that I describe as for NPCs. because this is mostly going to be used for an NPC to contact you when they're in need, or for a quest hook to catch up to your party. It's not often you're going to find a use for Animal Messenger. Next up, we are moving on to Blindness Deafness, a second level necromancy. I believe this is our first necromancy. Requires only a verbal component. Invokes a saving throw up to 30 feet on one creature for your action, lasts up to a minute. You can blind or deafen a foe. Choose one creature you can see within range to make a Constitution saving throw. If it fails, it is either blinded or deafened, your choice for the duration. At the end of each of its turn, the target making a Constitution saving throw. On a success, the effect ends. At higher levels, you can target additional creatures. Blind or deafen people. What can I say? It's broadly applicable. It's useful if you need to be aggressive, or if you need just someone to not be able to see or hear for a short amount of time. Not exactly the best spell in the world, but not the worst either. You are probably gonna not go bad if you choose it. You'll probably get more use out of some other choices. It is a better than middle of the road option. Next up, we have an iconic bardic magical trick. We have Calm Emotions. With Calm Emotions, you attempt... it is a second level enchantment that requires you to be able to speak and move, and has a concentration. So, hope you're not concentrating on something. Invokes a saving throw for one action, up to 60 feet in a 20-foot sphere for 1 minute. You attempt to suppress strong emotions in a group of people. Each humanoid within a 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point you choose within range must make a charisma saving throw. Creature can choose to fail the saving throw if it wishes. If a creature fails, choose one of the following two effects. Oh, excuse me. You can either suppress any effect causing a target to be charmed, or... Just a moment, sorry, I need to pull my timer in front of me. Pull OBS, rather. To be charmed or frightened. You can suppress that. Oh, weird. It lists this. It lists this strangely. You can suppress any effect causing a target to be charmed or frightened. When the spell ends, any suppressed effect resumes, provided the duration has not expired in the meantime. The other effect, alternatively, you can make a target indifferent about creatures of your choice that it is hostile towards. This indifference ends if the target is attacked or harmed by magic, or witnesses any of its friends being harmed. When this magic ends, the creature becomes hostile again, unless, you know, the DM rules otherwise, so the situation has changed. Usually would be situations in which the creature does not become hostile again. Calm Emotions is a bard staple. It's just good. It's not bad. It's not exactly the most useful combat option in the game, but it's not the worst either. You can use it to cancel charm or fear effects. You can use it to stop a fight that you didn't mean to start, or that you can run away from. It's an A tier, a solid A tier. Yeah, we're gonna have some problems, aren't we? Can I pin columns? Column actions, let's see. If I freeze it, does it? Yeah, okay, good, great. Perfect. Calm Emotions is good. It's a great spell. If you're a bard, take it. I didn't say that word. Oops. God damn it. I'm gonna put together the punishment wheel, and this is gonna be the first time I spin on the punishment wheel, because I keep screwing up that manipulate, and I'm so sorry. Next up, we've got Cloud of Daggers, which is a second level conjuration. A full suite of requirements, including concentration, but no money. At least there's that. One action for 60-foot range with a 5-foot cube for 1 minute. You fill the air with spinning daggers in a cube, 5 feet on each side, centered on a point you choose within range. Creature takes 4d4 slashing damage when it enters this magic's area for the first time on a turn, or starts its turn there. And it increases by 2d4 for each slot level above second. Cloud of Daggers would be terrible if it weren't for the damage scaling. 4d4 on a second level is pretty good, and it sticks around. Cloud of Daggers is handy. You can't move it once it's down, and it does friendly fire, but yeah, it's alright. As a bard spell, it's kind of, as a bard magic, it's kind of whatever. Your wizard is gonna get more out of this again, but those times you want it, if you want to throw some damage down, Gravel Spot's used Cloud of Daggers quite a bit early on. I think, don't have it anymore, but early on, excellent, excellent choice. Later kind of falls off, and again, as a bard, you have got more valuable options, but it's not bad. You haven't chosen it's not going to sit in your list doing nothing, which is what characterizes a bad magical option. I'll keep going with the Manipulate until 2:10. 2 hours, 10 minutes by the uptimer. Next up, we got Crown of Madness. This is this is a magical option that you're going to think is an iconic bard magical option, but actually, not really. 1 humanoid, verbal, somatic, and concentration. Evokes a saving throw for 1 action in a range of 120 feet for 1 creature for 1 minute. I'm going to stop reading these and instead just read the text blocks. It's taking too much time. 1 humanoid of your choice that you can see within range must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or become charmed by you for the duration. While the target is charmed in this way, a twisted crown of jagged iron appears on its head, and a madness glows in its eyes. The charmed target must use its action before moving on each of its turns to make a melee attack against a creature other than itself that you mentally choose. The target can act normally on its choose if you choose no creature or if none are within its reach. On your subsequent turns, you must use your action to maintain control over the target, or this magic ends. Also, the target can make a wisdom saving throw at the end of each turn. On a success, the magic ends. Crown of Madness sounds like a Gruth Bard spell, but it is a Warlock spell. I said the S word again. Damn it. It seems like a good choice for bards, but actually it is a warlock's choice. It's actually not very good for a bard. You're going to want to be charming people in other ways to do other things to them. It's great for control, but it's a kind of control that only works in a fight. Or I guess to start a whole lot of shit, but the theming is slightly off for bard. I'm going to land this in the D. I keep thinking about ways to use it, and then I keep thinking, damn it, if only I was a warlock and could cast this frequently. But as a bard, a 2nd level slot and a 2nd level choice, those are getting into primo choices, and Crown of Madness just ain't it. Next up, we got Detect Thoughts, which is a 2nd level divination. Alright. Has the full suite of requirements, verbal, somatic, material, and concentration. For the duration, you can read the thoughts of certain creatures when you cast this, and as your action on each turn until it ends, you can focus your mind on any one creature that you can see within 30 feet of you. The creature you choose has intelligence 3 or lower, or it doesn't speak any language, it's unaffected. You learn the surface thoughts of the creature, what's most on its mind is. In that moment, as an action, you can either shift your attention to another creature's thoughts or attempt to probe deeper into the same creature's mind. If you probe deeper, the target must make a wisdom saving throw. This is an essay of a spell. If it fails, you gain insight into its reasoning and its emotional state, and something that looms large in its mind. If it succeeds, the magic ends immediately. Either way, the target knows that you're probing its mind, and unless you shift your attention to another creature's thoughts, the creature can use its action on its turn to make an intelligence check contested by your intelligence check to end your magic. Questions verbally directed at the target naturally shape the course of its thoughts, so this magic is particularly effective as part of interrogation. You can also use this magic to detect the presence of thinking creatures you can't see. When you cast this or as your action during the duration, you can search for thoughts within 30 feet of you. This can penetrate barriers, but 2 feet of rock, 2 inches of any metal other than lead, or a thin sheet of lead blocks you. You can't detect a creature with an intelligence of 3 or lower, or one that doesn't speak any language. Once you detect the presence of a creature in this way, you can read its thoughts for the rest of the duration as described above, even if you can't see it, but it must still be within range. Detect thoughts is fine. It does what it does. It does what it says it does. Yeah, it's fine. It's a solid B. You can't go wrong picking it, but it's also not like a must-have. Moving right along, we have Enhance Ability, a 2nd level transmutation. That has the full suite of requirements, including concentration, but no gold pieces at least. You touch a creature and bestow upon it a magical enhancement. Choose one of the following effects. The target gains that effect until the spell ends. This is another of those Swiss Army magics that does a whole lot of things. You can either give advantage on all Constitution checks and give them 2d6 temporary hit points once. Give them advantage on strength checks and double their carrying capacity. Advantage on dexterity checks, doesn't take damage from falling 20 feet or less. Advantage on charisma, no side benefit. Advantage on intelligence checks, no side benefit. Advantage on wisdom checks, no side benefit. When you cast this using a slot of 3rd level or higher, you can target one additional creature. Don't take this. Enhance ability is one of those magics that they nerfed going from previous editions to 5th, and it has been thrown square into the dumpster. Doubling carrying capacity would be cool if it weren't for the fact that this only lasts for an hour, and most groups don't care about carrying capacity that much. 2d6 temporary hit points would be really nice if it wasn't once. Reducing falling damage of 20 feet or less if you're not incapacitated is extremely narrow and not a great side benefit. And most importantly, this only functions on checks. Checks are active actions. You choose to do checks. So saving throws, this does nada for. Things that are not explicitly ability checks, this does nada for. That includes attacks. That includes spell attacks, or magic attacks. That includes things that use specified like ranged magic or ranged weapon attacks. It used to just straight up enhance your one of your ability scores, but it has been narrowed into oblivion in 5th edition. Enhance ability is a trap choice. It's not the worst trap choice. It's not bad. When you want it, it's fine, but you're not going to want it very often, and it's not a good choice as a bard. It sounds great, and it should be great. You'd think as a bard you would want buffs. But this is one of those buffs that's just not as good as it seems like. It even eats your concentration. For a full hour. No es bueno. We're going to move on to Enthrall. Enthrall is a 2nd level enchantment. Hi, hello. Hopefully your midterms go well. We are on to a 2nd level enchantment, Enthrall. Only verbal somatic components. You weave a distracting string of words, causing creatures of your choice that you can see within range and that can hear you to make a wisdom saving throw. Any creature that can't be charmed succeeds automatically, and if you or your companions are fighting a creature, it has advantage on the save. On a failed save, the target has disadvantage on wisdom perception checks made to perceive any creature other than you until it ends, or until the creature can no longer hear you. This ends if you are incapacitated and can no longer speak. This is an iconic bard spell. Maybe not like the most staple of Bard's magical options, but a very, very, very good Bard magical option. This is going squarely in the A tier, as you want to take this. It's flavorful, it's useful, you can use it to make someone pay attention to only you. However, you're gonna get a Bard spell feature that more or less does this, so once you get that, it'll probably sit around in your spell list and get replaced, which is why it's only sitting at the A tier instead of the S tier. This has so many applications. Being able to just hypnotize someone, to make someone focus on you and you alone. But it clashes a little bit with some class features. Warlocks use this at an S. This is, like, God, do they always want this. But Bards, a little redundant. Next up, we're going to move on to Heat Metal. Heat Metal is a 2nd level transmutation that has the full bevy of components, but it does not cost any money. Choose a manufactured metal object, such as a metal weapon or a suit of heavy or medium metal armor that you can see within range. Cause the object to glow red hot. Any creature in physical contact with the object takes 2d8 fire damage when you cast this. Until it ends, you can use a bonus action on each of your subsequent turns to cause this damage again. If a creature is holding or wearing the object, it takes the damage from it. The creature must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or drop the object if it can. If it doesn't drop the object, it has disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls until the start of your next turn. Notably that's disadvantage on all attack rolls and ability checks until the start of your next turn, not just using that object. And the damage increases when you use higher slots. So, Heat Metal is it's good. It's really good. Heat Metal is on a lot of class lists, and everyone who can access Heat Metal wants to at least think about it. Yes, exactly. Zippity zoop, your armor is now horribly murdering you, is a big reason you want Heat Metal. Anyone who wears metal armor, anyone who would get in your way, and as a bard, you're going to piss off a lot of people who wear armor. This just shuts them down. Anyone who uses a metal weapon, this just shuts them down. It's a Constitution saving throw, so, you know, they aren't the resistance for it isn't the best, but it's not the worst either. This is broadly applicable in and out of combat. It's just good, and it's mean. It's so mean. Heat Metal is so fucking mean. Wait a minute. Sorry, I do have to touch on the components briefly. This does require a flame. A flame is obviously one of those material components you can't just carry around in a pouch. So, you might want to consider carrying a focus for stuff like this. Why foci tend to be better than material component pouches. And yes, they still take the full damage, I believe. Yes. Yeah. They take immediate damage. The save is actually just to drop the object if they can and avoid further damage. It's quite good. One of your better combat choices. Next up, we've got an even better combat choice. One of the spoilers. This is an S rank spell. I said the word again. Alright. Well, we're gonna say until 2:18, I can't say the S word anymore, and then that manipulate will finally end. I'm sorry I keep goofing that. I will be making up the punishment wheel for that. Hold Person, which is a second level enchantment. One of the S ranks of the game, one of D&D's all-stars across every class. Full bevy of material components. Thankfully, nothing super weird. And concentration. But, you know, it's gotta have some limitations. Choose a humanoid you can see within 60 feet. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be paralyzed for the duration. At the end of each of its turns, the target can make another wisdom saving throw. On a success, it ends on that target. So, if you upcast it and target additional humanoids, one person saving does not end the whole thing. Only ends it on them. Hold Person is Tasha's Hideous Laughter ++. It got nerfed and it's still an S rank spell. Hold Person, I said the S word again. Hold Person used to actually genuinely be a problem, a broken piece of nonsense. It's got nerfed, mostly through nerfing the paralysis status effect, which is still really powerful. It's basically just a better incapacitate. It's an incapacitate that makes them drop everything and fall down. Which Tasha's kind of already does, but they can still move. Paralysis just stops any and all anything. Hold Person, you just target someone, they freeze up and fall over, drop everything, they can't do crap. It only works on humanoids, but, well, there's a better version, higher levels, that works on everything. Everyone wants Hold Person if they can take it. It's just stupendous. In and out of combat at all times. Speaking of stupendous in and out of combat at all times, we've got our next magical option, which is invisibility, a second level illusion. Something you're always gonna want to take this. A creature you touch becomes invisible until this ends. So for an hour, anything the target is wearing or carrying is invisible as long as it is on the target's person, and it ends for a target that attacks or casts any magic. Attacks or casts a magic is a very lenient restriction, by the way. This means that you can steal things off people, you can make all sorts of ability checks, you can pretty much do anything as long as it isn't, well, attacking. Use all sorts of class features. Being invisible is amazing, and the only reason this is not an S tier is because there is a better version of this spell that is just straight busted. I said the S word again. Better version of this magic that is just straight busted. Yeah, invisibility. Fantastic. Requires your concentration. Honestly, I think it's even a little too powerful. Second level, though, so a little expensive. Next up, we've got Knock. Second level transmutation that only requires a verbal component. 60-foot range on an object. Choose an object you can see within 60 feet. The object can be a door, box, chest, set of manacles, a padlock, or any other object that contains a mundane or magical means that prevents access. A target that is held shut by a mundane lock that is stuck or barred becomes unlocked, unstuck, or unbarred. The object has multiple locks, only one of them is unlocked. You choose a target that is held shut with Arcane Lock. That specific effect is suppressed for 10 minutes, during which time the target can be opened and shut normally. When you cast this, when you cast Knock, a loud knock, audible from as far away as 300 feet, emanates from the target object. This is... Knock is... that last part of Knock was added to nerf Knock because it used to be straight busted. This used to just replace rogues entirely because you could just unlock anything. These days, it's a little more restricted. It only unlocks one lock, and it has to like unstuck and unbar things. It allows you to open the path, which is nice. It does more than just replace the rogue. It does suppress Arcane Lock, but Arcane Lock fucking sucks. It is an NPC magical option, so like you're never gonna have it. As Bard, you're not gonna really use Knock, unfortunately. It is good. It's a middle of the road choice. But you're not really going to make use of it. I'm allowed to say spell again. You're not really going to make use of Knock as a spell because, well, it takes up one of your spell choices, which are really narrow as a bard. And more importantly, you can just pick locks. You're probably pretty good at picking locks. You have a friend who can pick locks. You can just talk someone into opening it for you, lie your way into the key. You have a bunch of ways of opening things. And the wizard is likely to have this spell. If you, the bard, are the group's primary, like, arcane spellcaster, then yeah, you're probably going to take Knock. But if you can get away with it, you probably won't. It has its uses. It causes some ruling problems sometimes, too, when people start trying to unstuck or unbar some strange situations, like a locked chain over a chest that's tied over a chest, things like that. Next up, we have a second level Abjuration, Lesser Restoration. This just requires verbal and somatic components. You touch a creature and can end either one disease or condition affecting it. That condition can be blinded, deafened, paralyzed, or poisoned. Lesser Restoration, good spell. As a bard spell, D tier. Crap, don't take it. The only reason you would take it is if you need it. Because it's really narrow. All it really does for you is cure diseases. And if you have, like, any divine spellcaster, they will have this on tap. You do not need to waste your spell space on it. Next up, we've got Locate Animals or Plants. A second level divination that has the full set of requirements, but is a ritual. It does not require concentration, at least. Describe or name a specific kind of beast or plant. Concentrating on the voice of nature in your surroundings, you learn the direction and distance to the closest creature or plant of that kind within 5 miles, if they are present. This is a druid spell that is a druid and a ranger spell that is on the bard's spell list for no reason other than giving bard more options. Do not take Locate Animals or Plants. You are wasting your spell choices when you take Locate Animals or Plants. Druids can get away with this spell because they can just swap that spell out whenever they want, but you as a bard, you're stuck with this trash if you take it for a full level, and you're going to use it maybe once a campaign ever. And if you have a ranger or a bard, they can still do this better. Next up, we've got Locate Object. effectively the same thing, but for objects. Requires concentration, not a ritual. Second level divination. Describe and name an object that is familiar to you. You sense the direction within, as long as it's within 1,000 feet. If the object is in motion, you know the direction of its movement. The spell can locate a specific object known to you as long as you have seen it up close within 30 feet at least once. Alternatively, the spell can locate the nearest object of a particular kind, such as a certain kind of apparel, jewel, furniture, tool, or weapon. This spell can't locate an object if any thickness of lead, even a thin sheet, blocks a direct path between you and the object. Locate object is, for a bard, garbage. For the same reason locate animals or plants is, it's just taking up one of your choices with something you're not going to use very often. This is a toolbox spell for wizards. A wizard would, or like especially a diviner, would have this in their book, just in their back pocket when they need it. Pull it out when they need it, prepare it, cast it, and then put it back away. Not great. Not a great choice. Magical Mouth, speaking of not great choices. The second level illusion, that is the full verbal somatic material, it does consume 10 GP worth of materials when it is cast. But it is a ritual at least. You implant a message within an object in range, a message that is uttered when a trigger condition is met. Choose an object that you can see and isn't being worn or carried by another creature, then speak it, which must be 25 words or less, though it can be delivered over as long as 10 minutes. Finally, determine the circumstance that will trigger the spell to deliver your message. When that circumstance occurs, a magical mouth appears on the object and recites the message in your voice and at the same volume you spoke. If the object you chose has a mouth or something that looks like a mouth, for example the mouth of a statue, the magical mouth appears there so that the words appear to be coming from the object's mouth. When you cast this spell, you can have the spell end after it delivers its message, or it can remain or repeat whenever the trigger occurs. Triggering condition can be as general or as detailed as you like, although it must be based on visual or audible conditions that can occur within 30 feet of the object. For example, you should instruct the mouth to speak whenever a creature meets within 30 feet of the object, or when a silver bell rings within 30 feet of it. This spell sucks. This is another of those toolbox spells that wizards are going to take. It's getting an E tier because it's cooler than some of the other toolbox spells, and thematically, a bard might like pick this up for coolness sake, but you're never using this. This is not only a toolbox spell, but an NPC toolbox spell. This is something that like Animal Messenger is going to be used to deliver a quest hook to you 90% of the time. Absolute fucking trash. Not totally useless, or it would be an F tier. And not an active detriment like True Strike, or it would be in the True Strike tier. I also just hate True Strike. Next up, we've got Phantasmal Force, a second level illusion that has verbal somatic material and concentrate. Also, to briefly mention Magical Mouth's requirements, its limitations of 25 words and all that specific stuff just makes it way worse. Not great. It's going to sit in your spell list and do nothing. Phantasmal Force, though. You craft an illusion that takes root in the mind of a creature you can see within range. The target must make an intelligence save. On a failed save, you create a phantasmal object, creature, or other visible phenomenon of your choice that is no longer larger than a 10-foot cube and is perceivable only by the target. The spell has no effect on undead or constructs. That's a strike against it, by the way. The phantasm includes sound, temperature, and other stimuli and is evident only to the creature. The target can use its action to examine the phantasm with an intelligence investigation check against your spell save DC. If the check succeeds, the target realizes that the phantom is an illusion, and the spell ends. While the target is affected by the target treats the phantasm as if it were real. The target rationalizes any illogical outcomes from interacting with the phantasm. For example, a target attempting to walk across the phantasmal bridge spans a chasm, falls once it steps onto the bridge. If the target survives the fall, it still believes the bridge exists and comes up with some other explanation for the fall. It was pushed, it slipped, blah blah blah. Effective target is so convinced of the phantasm's reality that it can even take damage from the illusion. Phantasm so created to appear as a creature can attack the target. Similarly, a phantasm created to appear as fire, pool of lava, or pool of acid can burn the target. Each round during your turn, the phantasm can deal 1d6 psychic damage to the target if it's in its area or within 5 feet, provided that the illusion is of a creature or hazard that would logically deal damage, such as by attacking. The target perceives the damage as a type appropriate to the illusion, but it's still psychic. This is a really complicated way to deal really tiny amounts of damage to people, while maybe setting up some like cool looking barriers for them. It's an illusion that can hurt people, so it's got its uses, but like I don't like this spell. It's a little too complicated. It's not that great. It's like damage scaling. You can't make it stronger. It only does 1d6 a turn. It takes up your concentration. It's got all these limitations. It is cool, and you can use it to do some neat shit. But it is effectively a worse version of a third level. Wait, third level? No. Is a fourth level spell that is pretty much the same idea but much cooler. It's a crappy phantasmal killer. It's a crappy illusionary terrain. It's all those things in one spell. I'm not gonna lie. There's not a lot of situations where Phantasmal Force is appealing. E tier. Next up, we got Pyrotechnics. Pyrotechnics is a second level transmutation spell. Choose an area of non-magical flame that you can see with verbal and somatic components. It fits within a 5-foot cube within 60 feet. You can extinguish the fire in that area, and you create either smoke or fireworks when you do so. You can either make fireworks, which causes the target fire to explode in a dazzling array of colors. Each creature within 10 feet of the target must succeed on a Constitution save or become blinded until the end of your next turn. Yeah, I must have got blown off by the wind. There's a funny detail in the description. Yep, Phantasmal Force kind of sucks. Or you can make thick black smoke. Spreads out from the target in a 20-foot radius, moving around corners. The area of the smoke is heavily obscured. It persists for 1 minute, or until strong wind disperses it. The only reason you would take this as a bard is because you do not have access to Fog Cloud or Color Spray. This spell sucks. This sounds good. This spell sounds good. But that requirement where you need a non-magical flame that you can see means that, yeah, you can only really use this when there's candles or torches or bonfires around that haven't been made with magic. Meaning if you light a campfire with prestidigitation, that doesn't count. Pyrotechnics is a cool spell. That's why it's going to get to sit in the middle of the road C tier. But it's not as useful as it seems. And there's a cantrip that's a cooler version of this because it's free. Second level spell slot is a fucking lot to do one of two lower level spells. I think Fog Cloud is... Yeah, Fog Cloud is like, what, level 1? Pretty sure Fog Cloud's really low level. Pyrotechnics, especially for a bard, just hard to argue for grabbing. Other classes have easier ways to create fire, but even then, the non-magical requirement really hurts it. Mostly carrying around a torch for the purposes of using pyrotechnics is a thing you can do, and blinding people or creating clouds is fine. Expensive, though. Real expensive. Next up, we have a second level divination spell, See Invisibility. Verbal, somatic, priceless material components, so really who cares. For the duration, you see invisible creatures and objects as if they were visible, and you can see to the ethereal plane. Ethereal creatures and objects appear ghostly and translucent. This is another of those toolkit spells. It's... Why would you use this when you have Fairy Fire? I do not know. As Fairy Fire can illuminate invisible objects for your friends. You can find invisible objects with perception checks anyway. Invisible creatures as well. It has its applications, but as a bard, you are not going to be using this. It's just too narrow. You can't switch spells out often enough for it to be particularly good. F tier. Not almost actively harmful. Next up, we are going to boomerang around to a good spell, Shatter, second level evocation. Verbal somatic material, no price, so who cares? A sudden loud ringing noise, painfully intense, erupts from a point of your choice within range. Each creature in a 10-foot radius sphere centered on that point must make a Constitution saving throw. A creature takes 3d8 thunder damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. Creature made of inorganic materials such as stone, crystal, or metal has disadvantage on this saving throw. A non-magical object that isn't being worn or carried also takes the damage if it's in the spell's area. And when you cast the spell using higher spellable spell slots, the damage increases by 1 die. So, Shatter is good. For a bard, Shatter's pretty great because it's one of your only just no questions asked, deal a bunch of damage in an area spells. Grovel Spots makes liberal use of this spell when, you know, you just need to blast an area, which happens more often than not. In combat, at least. That said, it's got friendly fire, and while it's an excellent damage type, as I said, thunder damage is not very often resisted or immune, and I don't think anything is immune to thunder damage. It does require a Constitution saving throw, and although it gives a disadvantage to creatures made of inorganic material, a lot of inorganic creatures have good Constitution saves. It sits in the B tier. It keeps it from being an amazing spell. It's just really good. It's a fun choice, and it's thematic for bards. It is, however, a combat spell. Next up, we've got Silence. Silence is a second-level illusion spell that can be cast as a ritual and has the full suite of verbal, somatic, and concentration, but not material components. For the duration, no sound can be created within or pass through a 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point you choose within 120 feet. Any creature or object entirely within the sphere is immune to thunder damage, and creatures are deafened while entirely inside it. Casting a spell that includes a verbal component is impossible there. Silence is one of those spells that sounds really niche, but has a whole bevy of uses. Deafening creatures makes it easier to sneak around. You can shut down pretty much anything dangerous a spellcaster can do. You can shut down other bards. You can stop any and all thunder damage, which this is one of the few spells to prevent thunder damage. It is broadly applicable and fun to use, but that broad application isn't super powerful. It's gonna sit in the middle of the road. You're happy when you have it, you don't really care when you don't have it, and your spell choices are a little narrow as a bard to justify always taking Silence. It's one of those ones you might pick up if it suits you, or if the situations you run into suit it particularly well. Next up, we have a second-level transmutation. We have Skywrite. This is another Xanathar spell, actually. It has verbal, somatic, and concentration components and can be used as a ritual. Takes up to an hour. Oh, it lasts up to an hour, I'm sorry. Cause up to 10 words to form in part of the sky you can see. The words appear to be made of clouds and remain in place for the spell's duration of an hour. The words dissipate when the spell ends. A strong wind can disperse the clouds and end the spell early. We hate a second-level spell that doesn't do anything super useful and can be dispelled by a first-level spell, so it's going into E tier, not the F tier, because Skywrite is cool as hell, but as a bard, you're not gonna use it very often. It's one of those NPC spells. You can use it to call for help, but more often you're gonna see an NPC using that one. Next up, we're gonna move on to what is not quite an iconic bard spell, but is a... No, this is an iconic bard spell. It's just been nerfed a little bit. We have Suggestion, a second-level enchantment spell, which has the trifecta. No somatic, just verbal, material, and concentration components. You suggest a course of activity limited to a sentence or two, and magically influence a creature you can see within 30 feet that can hear and understand you. Creatures that can't be charmed are immune to this effect. The suggestion must be worded in a manner as to make the course of action sound reasonable. Asking the creature to stab itself, throw itself onto a spear, immolate itself, or some other obviously harmful act ends the spell. The target must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, it pursues the course of action you described to the best of its ability. The suggested course of action can continue for the entire duration. If the suggested activity can be completed in a shorter time, the spell ends when the subject finishes what it was asked to do. You can also specify conditions that will trigger a special activity for the duration. For example, you might suggest that a knight give her war horse to the first beggar she meets. If the condition isn't met before the spell expires, the activity isn't performed. If you or any of your companions damage the target, the spell ends, and it otherwise lasts for 8 hours. Suggestion is an iconic, useful bard spell that you are going to get tons out of. It's fantastic. Tell someone what to do, they go and do it. Sure, there's a wisdom save, but being able to tell someone what to do and having them go and do it, I don't have to tell you how good that is. It is as good as it sounds. And in fact, has a bunch of shit written into it to prevent it from being used in other ways, because it's that good. Unfortunately, next up, we have a dud. We have a second level evocation, Warding Wind. It requires a verbal component and concentration. A strong wind, 20 miles per hour, blows around you in a 10-foot radius and moves with you, remaining centered on you. The wind lasts for the spell's duration. The wind has the following effects. It deafens you and other creatures in its area. It extinguishes unprotected flames in its area that are torch-sized or smaller. It hedges out vapor, gas, and fog that can be dispersed by strong wind. The area is difficult terrain for creatures other than you. The attack rolls of ranged weapon attacks have disadvantage if attacks passed in or out of the wind. Warding Wind is, honestly, I'm not quite sure why it's on the Bard spell list. It's not very good for Bards. It's not very thematically appropriate for Bards. It's, at best, it is a kind of crappy ranged attack barrier. You can use it to deafen spellcasters if you really need to. Although, typically, as a Bard, deafening people is not in your benefit. You can use it to put out fire if you really need to. There's better ways to get this spell's effect, and other classes get more use out of Warding Wind. The biggest, most useful effect it has is for 10 minutes it can hedge out, like, Cloud Kill and shit. A firm D-tier spell. Not a spell I'd recommend to take, but if you like it, and you really have a good opportunity to use it, go for it. Next up, we have a second level enchantment spell, Zone of Truth. It has verbal, somatic, and concentration components, so you need to be able to move to speak and to concentrate to use this. Create a magical zone that guards against deception in a 15-foot radius sphere centered on a point of your choice within 60 feet. Till the spell ends, a creature that enters the spell's area for the first time on a turn or starts its turn there must make a charisma save. On a failed save, a creature can't speak a deliberate lie while in the radius. You know whether each creature fails or succeeds on its saving throw. An affected creature is aware of the spell and can thus avoid answering questions to which it can normally respond with a lie. Such a creature can be evasive in its answers as long as it remains within the boundaries of truth. This is a spell for clerics, because you're gonna cast this if you're a cop. There's a few situations where, like, outside of an interrogation, this might be useful for tripping up someone who's particularly, like, lie-happy, or, like, a tricksy politician or another bard, but by and large, clerics like this spell. Bards hate this spell because bards love to lie. Even if you're a good bard who doesn't like to lie to people, you're gonna embellish things. You're gonna make up stories. You could just you could just suggestion someone to answer your questions. You could just charm them so they want to answer your questions. This is a cleric spell. F tier. Not always actively harmful, but it goes against what you want to do. And also, like, ACAB. Okay. Let's see. We're sitting at 2 hours 40 minutes-ish. And we're about to move on to third level spells. I think I'm going to take a quick break here to go refresh my drink because my voice is getting a little bit tired. And then we're going to continue on, do these third level spells, and I think stop there because this is taking longer than I thought. In the meantime, I'd love to see people's, like, thoughts, and maybe, like, now is a good time in chat to bring in, to mention spells you might want to see me tackle before I call this down. It doesn't need to be bard spells, obviously. Just, if it's something I don't have a reference to, I might skip it. I'm gonna be right back in a couple of moments, again, to refresh my drink, and maybe open a window, because it's getting kind of warm in here. Be right back. Okay, hello. Had to get myself another drink. I ran out. Just stretch your, you want to stretch your legs every couple hours anyway. How is everybody? How is chat? Flip back to the list, and we can continue on our journey rating and discussing bard spells. As was last mentioned in the chat, Zone of Truth can be just completely obviated by the use of suggestion. Kind of funny. Yeah, let's finish up let's do these third level spells and then I think finish up there. Because this took way longer than I thought it would, and I'm running out of voice. So we're going to start off with a fucking doozy. Bestow Curse. Bestow Curse is a doozy of a spell, as I just said. This is a third level necromancy. Third level is when spells start getting pretty wild. So we'll do third, and then like later I can do fourth, fifth, and sixth, and then like 7th, 8th, and 9th, and we can do like... I can finish up this bard spell list later, but we'll do 3. We'll do third level. So we have Bestow Curse. Oh, let me actually switch back to the... Oh, that song is on that anyway. I forgot. I'm very smart. Okay. Bestow Curse. Verbal somatic concentration components, not too bad. You touch a creature, and that creature must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or become cursed for the duration of the spell. When you cast this spell, choose the nature of the curse from the following options. You choose one ability score and give them disadvantage on abilities checks and saving throws made without ability score, basically forever. Oh, no, it only lasts for a minute, but, still, that's pretty crippling. While cursed, the target has disadvantage on attack rolls made against you. While cursed, the target must make a wisdom saving throw at the start of each of its turns. If it fails, it wastes that action doing nothing. While the target is cursed, your attacks and spells do an extra 1d8 necrotic damage to the target. So, you have a bevy of delightful abilities to choose from. A remove curse spell ends this effect. At the DM's option, you may create your own alternative curse effects, but it should be no powerful than those described above. The DM has final say on such a curse's effect. Basically, this just means you can come up with your own creative, fun little curses, and your DM is required to at least think about those curses and allow you to, like... They're supposed to talk to you about it and be like, well, we could do this, or we could do that, and we can do this, we can't do that. This spell is unique, in a way, in that in higher levels, if you cast a spell using a higher level spell slot, the duration is concentration up to 10 minutes for 4th level spell. For 5th level or higher, the duration is 8 hours. Notice that that's not 8 hours or concentration. It just becomes 8 hours. Still need concentration, but you don't have to... Yeah. Use a spell slot of 7th or higher, the duration is 24 hours. Use a 9th level spell slot, the spell lasts until it is dispelled. Using a spell slot of 5th level or higher grants a duration that does not require concentration. So there you go. This Bestow Curse is a unique spell that gets way better at 5th or higher level because it loses the stipulation of requiring concentration. This means that I'm actually going to put Bestow Curse in 2 different places. It is a middle-of-the-road, powerful, but not, like, game-breaking spell. Hello, welcome. Powerful, but not game-breaking at base level. But it becomes an S-tier spell at 5th level. The kind of thing that you really want to just have around to deal with any jerk that gets in your way. If you're the kind of person to bestow curses, once you hit 5th level spell slots, bestow curses is fucking ridiculous. We're gonna move on to Catnap, another ridiculously good spell. Catnap, I'm gonna talk about Catnap for a bit. 3rd level enchantment spell from a splat book, as Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Only requires somatic components and a material, a pinch of sand. It doesn't cost anything, so we can ignore it, basically. You make a calming gesture, and up to 3 willing creatures of your choice that you can see within 30 feet fall unconscious for the spell's duration. The spell ends on a target early if it takes damage or someone uses an action to shake or slap it awake. If a target remains unconscious for the full 10 minutes, that target gains the benefit of a short rest, and it can't be affected by the spell again until it finishes a long rest. When you cast the spell using a spell slot of 4th or higher, you can target additional creatures, 1 for each slot. Catnap breaks the game's economy. Why does Catnap break the game's economy, you might ask? Well, short rests are meant to sort of be a limited resource. You only get a few each day because they're an hour long. They require you to sit down and take a full hour of uninterrupted rest. So you need to find a quiet place that you're not going to be interrupted, and you can't be doing anything like crafting or working on a skill while you're resting. And very few things recharge on a short rest. However, certain resources do recharge on a short rest. Certain resources like key points, Bardic Inspiration charges above level 3 start recharging on a short rest, and most notably, all of a Warlock's spell slots come back on a short rest. Catnap allows you to give someone a 10-minute short rest, which, on top of giving them a chunk of HP and their class features back, if they're a Warlock, just gives them all of their spells. 2 Warlocks can use Catnap to effectively cheat out free short rests once per character, but that's still wild. Trading 1/3 level spell slot for all of your spell slots back, and if you're a warlock, you might have like 2 spell slots, and they're both the same level. So trading 1/3 level spell to get both of your slots back, or actually it had to be a friend. You can only cast it on other creatures, right? So having your friend cast this on you as a bard, Catnap is amazing. You don't really care about short rests outside of your bardic inspiration, which you're throwing around like crazy anyway. But your friends are gonna love you for having short rest, especially given you have Song of Rest, which enhances short rests. Catnap is an A tier spell. It's not going to be used in every party, in every circumstance, but it's up there. You might notice that I have a lot of spells in the A tier ranking right now, and that's just because a lot of low-level bard spells are very good. They get worse as the levels go higher because they get more expensive. Next up, speaking of more expensive, we've got Clairvoyance, a 3rd level divination spell that requires a verbal, somatic, material component, and concentration. It is a costly material component, but it is a special focus. A focus worth at least 100 GP, either a jeweled horn for hearing or a glass eye for seeing, so we saw this with Identify. It doesn't get consumed, but you still gotta get a hold of it, so this is 100 GP in the bank, but once you have 3rd level spells, that's not going to be too bad. You create an invisible sensor within within 1 mile in a location familiar to you, a place you have visited or seen before, or in an obvious location that is unfamiliar to you, like behind a door, around a corner, in a grove of trees. The sensor remains in place for the duration, and it can't be attacked or otherwise interacted with. When you cast the spell, you choose seeing or hearing. You can choose the chosen sense through the sensor as if you were in its place. As your action, you can switch between seeing and hearing. A creature that can see the sensor, such as a creature benefiting from see invisibility or true sight, sees a luminous, intangible orb about the size of your fist. Clairvoyance is a worse version of Arcane Eye. It's fine when you need it, but as a bard, if you need Clairvoyance, your party might be lacking something. It is a solid D tier. I would not consider it a middle-of-the-road choice. It's kind of whatever. It's sort of a toolkit spell. You require a costly component that thankfully isn't consumed, but it takes up your concentration. And how often are you going to be remote viewing somebody? Which is a use case that you really got to think about. It's almost an NPC spell, but being able to cast it around corners and behind blind doors and stuff ups it to fairly useful, if really expensive, for a bard. Next up, we've got Dispel Magic, a 3rd level abjuration spell that requires verbal and somatic components. Choose 1 creature, object, or magical effect within range. Any spell of 3rd level or lower on the target ends. For each spell of 4th level or higher on the target, make an ability check using your spellcasting ability. The DC equals 10 plus the spell's level. On a successful check, the spell ends. When you cast a spell using a spell slot of 4th level or higher, you automatically end the effects of a spell of the spell's level or equal to, or less than the level of the spell slot used. So basically, you can upcast it to change it from 3rd level or lower to 4th level or lower, etc., etc. Dispel Magic is fantastic. Every single spellcaster should at least make serious thought about taking Dispel Magic. It seems kind of limited on the surface, but the fact that if you target a creature or object, it ends any spells on it. All spells of 3rd level or lower, and then each spell of 4th level or higher rolls to stick around. This can be used to cure your allies of specific strange debuffs, as well as things like Bestow Curse. This ends all sorts of annoying effects. This can break puzzles. This can strip buffs off of people. Dispel Magic is incredibly widely applicable for every spellcaster. Every spellcaster wants it, Bard included. It is a staple, which you could say is what S stands for in this case. Spell you always want to take. But, you can interpret S to mean whatever you wish. Next up, we've got a 3rd level enchantment that is, and enemies abound. Verbal, somatic, and concentration requirements, so not so bad. The concentration's pretty bad. You reach into the mind of one creature you can see and force it to make an intelligence saving throw. The creature automatically succeeds if it is immune to being frightened. On a failed save, the target loses the ability to distinguish friend from foe regarding all creatures it can see as enemies until the spell ends. Each time the target takes damage, it can repeat the saving throw, ending the effect on itself as a success. Whenever the affected creature chooses another creature as a target, it must choose the target at random from among the creatures it can see within range of the attack, spell, or other ability it's using. If an enemy provokes an opportunity attack from the affected creature, the creature must make that attack if it is able to. Enemies Abound is another of those, seems like a bard spell, but it's technically more of a warlock spell. It's got that madness flavor that warlocks love. It causes chaos among the enemy ranks. The bard can use it for sure. It will be useful, not super useful. Concentration is really tight on bards, and you'd rather be making friends than causing chaos, or at least making people think you're their friend. Sort of the option for the edgy chaos bard. It also is just weaker confusion. Confusion being a 4th level spell, and confusion is just going to be way more consistently useful. Not the worst, not that great though. It sits in the D tier as, it's another class's spell that could be useful. Next we have Fear, a 3rd level illusion spell that requires the full suite of requirements. There's verbal, somatic, material, and concentration. You protect a phantasmal image of a creature's worst fears. Each creature in a 30-foot cone must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or drop whatever it's holding and become frightened for the duration. While frightened by this spell, a creature must take the dash action and move away from you by the safest available route on each of its turns, unless there is nowhere to move. If the creature ends its turn in a location where it doesn't have line of sight to you, the creature can make a wisdom saving throw. On a successful save, the spell ends for that creature. Fear is a better version of Thunderwave for bards. That doesn't mean it's particularly good, as you would probably rather be getting yourself out of that situation. But as a powerful way to get people away from you, Fear is fantastic. Yeah, just keep running and shouting, "Why are you running? Why are you running?" so that they can never make the save. The problem, however, with Fear is that Frightened is a condition that a whole lot of things, and I think it's possibly the most resisted and immunity status effect in the game. We've already seen at least 3 spells that grant immunity to it, and several that grant resistance to it. And so, as a whole, it's scarier than it looks. That is to say, Fear is still solid, but, it's alright. Next up, we have, oh god, we have a 3rd level Necromancy, Feign Death. Requires verbal, somatic, and material components. Can be used as a ritual. You touch a willing creature and put it into a cataleptic state that is indistinguishable from death. For 1 hour, or until you use an action to touch the target and dismiss the spell, the target appears dead to all outward inspection, and to spells used to determine the target's status. The target is blinded and incapacitated, and its speed drops to 0. The target has resistance to all damage except psychic damage. If the target is diseased or poisoned when you cast the spell, or becomes diseased or poisoned while under the spell's effect, the disease and poison have no effect until the spell ends. Feign Death is a... well, it's a fun gimmick. It sure is a funny gimmick spell. It's a D tier. I don't have a lot of... you'd think that this spell would have a lot of, like, applications, but ultimately it's just like the fake death pill from Metal Gear Solid. Or any other of the... anything that has something like that in it. It's sort of a toolkit spell. One you're going to bust out when you want it in a very specific circumstance, and otherwise not super useful. You'd think that the poison Suppression, the poison disease suppression would be good. But if you remember, back in the second level category, we have Lesser Restoration, which can just cure disease or poison. So, yeah. Feign Death, not great. Oh god, Glyph of Warding. This is an essay spell. I think I'm actually just going to summarize this instead of reading it, because it's a whole lot. Glyph of Warding is 2 spells in 1. It costs 200 gold pieces to cast. Cannot be cast as a ritual, so it also costs a 3rd level spell slot. Takes a full hour to cast, but permanently marks something with an invisible magical rune. You can mark walls, objects that can be closed, tables, surfaces, all sorts of things. And it is a magical sigil that you decide the trigger for. The trigger is freeform. You yourself can define it and talk to your DM about what the trigger actually is. Touch it, stand it, read it, look at it, get anywhere near it, fuck with the object it's on. The sky is the limit. As for what the glyph does, the glyph does one of 2 things. It either stores a spell and then casts it, level 3 or lower, and then casts that spell, or it explodes. Glyph of Warding, I didn't read it out because it has a lot of uses, and reading out most of the text is just specifying that it's very freeform and you can do a lot of things with it, and that the triggers can more or less be whatever you want. Explosive Runes is the fun use for Glyph of Warding. When triggered, the glyph erupts a magical energy within a 20-foot radius sphere centered on the glyph. The sphere spreads around corners. Each creature within the area must make a dex save. On a failed save, a creature takes 5d8 acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder, your choice, when you make it. Or half as much on a successful one. So it's a fairly weak 3rd level AoE. Actually, wait, no, that's about a fireball. So it's a fireball that goes off when you want it, that can be put on pretty much anything with pretty much any trigger condition, or it can go off as a spell. Glyph of Warding is a spell that you are either going to love or hate, depending on how you use it, how much money and time you have, because it takes a full hour to cast, and generally, like, the sky is the limit, but it has a lot of limitations to it at the same time. Very paradoxical in that respect. This is a spell that is as good as your thoughts about what to use it for can be. Unfortunately, it's more of a wizard spell than a bard spell. It's still a B tier. It would be higher on other classes. But again, you're using up one of your 3rd level spell choices for an expensive spell that takes a while to cast and is somewhat gimmicky. Fun. Definitely take it if you can think of uses for it. But if you're not going to be super creative with Glyph of Warding, then you're not going to get much use out of Glyph of Warding. Wizards love that spell, though. Wizards get so much more use out of Glyph of Warding. Next up, we've got Hypnotic Pattern, a 3rd level illusion spell that is one of my favorites. This is a spell that requires somatic, material, and concentration components. The material component doesn't cost anything, and I'm genuinely astonished for what this spell's effect is. I love Hypnotic Pattern. I have to spoil it. This is easily an A or even an S tier. 3rd level illusion spell, you create a twisting pattern of colors that weaves through the air inside a 30-foot cube within 120 feet. The pattern appears for a moment and vanishes. Each creature in the area who sees the pattern must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, the creature becomes charmed for the duration. While charmed by this spell, the creature is incapacitated and has a speed of 0. The spell ends if the creature takes any damage or someone else uses an action to take the creature out of its stupor. Do you ever want to just take a 30-foot cube of creatures and make them stop doing anything? Cast Hypnotic Pattern. You want to shut down a room full of guards? Cast Hypnotic Pattern. You want to take an entire audience of people and make them not see what you're about to do? Cast Hypnotic Pattern. Have you been ambushed by incredibly dangerous enemies? cast Hypnotic Pattern. Are you in a situation where you just don't want other people around? Cast Hypnotic Pattern. Hypnotic Pattern is... It's barred as hell. It is widely applicable, and the only problem with it is that you get a lot of effects like this in your Bard class features. You get Fascination, you get the earlier spell Enthrall. It's a little redundant, but it is humongous, it is incredibly long range, and it shuts people down for a full minute. S tier. You are going to find dozens of uses for Hypnotic Pattern, especially given it affects every creature. Every creature, no questions. If they're immune to Charm, that's the only thing that stops it, really. Charm is a common immunity, unfortunately, but most of the things you're going to want to use this on aren't immune to it. Next up, we have another new spell from Tasha's, Intellect Fortress. Intellect Fortress is a 3rd level abjuration spell that requires a verbal component and concentration. For the duration, you or one willing creature you see is within range, that is 30 feet, has resistance to psychic damage, as well as advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws for 1 hour. When you cast this spell using a spell slot of 4th level or higher, you can target additional creatures. Intellect Fortress is probably the only good defensive buff in the entire game. That's not true. Entire Bard spell. There's some good ones. There's some really good ones on the Bard spell list that are coming up later. Intellect Fortress is really good. Powerful spell. Great effect. Advantage on 3 saving throws, and they are the mental saves, which are common for enemies to target, is big. Resistance to psychic damage is fine. Not a ton of things deal psychic damage. It's not the super common, but when it shows up, it's pretty rough, so it's good to be resistant to it. Intellect Fortress is an A tier. Easy pick. It's one of those spells that if you don't know what you want to pick, grab Intellect Fortress. It'll always serve you well as a bard. You want to protect your mental saving throws, even though those are your good ones, because a lot of things are going to target them. And you want resistance to psychic damage when you get psychic damaged. Additionally, you can use this on, like, your barbarian or your fighter or someone else whose brain isn't so strong and shore it up. Excellent spell. If you upcast this so that it can protect multiple people, you can basically shield the whole party. Next up, we have Leomund's Tiny Hut. This is another spell you see Gravel Spots use a lot. 3rd level evocation spell, requires a verbal, somatic, and material components, but no concentration, and can be cast as a ritual. 10-foot radius, a mobile dome of force springs into existence around and above you and remains stationary for the duration. The spell ends if you leave its area. 9 creatures of medium or smaller can fit within the dome, inside the dome with you. The spell fails if it includes a larger creature or more than 9 creatures. Creatures and objects within the dome when you cast the spell can move through it freely. All other creatures and objects are barred from passing through it. Spells and other magical effects can't extend through the dome or be cast through it. The atmosphere inside this space is comfortable and dry, regardless of the weather outside. Until the spell ends, you can command the interior to become dimly lit or dark. The dome is opaque from the outside of any color you choose, but it is transparent from the inside. So this spell, for 8 hours, if you spend a minute and a 3rd level spell slot, creates an immobile, completely impenetrable dome of force that only Dispel Magic can get through. And Dispel Magic has a lot of trouble getting through it if you decide to spend a higher level spell slot on it, because although it doesn't have any special effects casting it at a higher level, you can still cast it at a higher level, which will protect it from Dispel Magic. Tiny Hut is ridiculous. On its surface, it's meant to be some kind of, like, camping travel spell, and you are going to use it a lot like that if you pick it up. But if you just use your brain just a little bit and think of the various situations where you would love an immovable, unbreakable dome of force, you can do all sorts of shit with this. It is a better globe of invulnerability because, well, no spells can extend through it or into it. instead of canceling out a certain level or below, it just stops all of them. Fireballs, anything. This shit protects you. It is slow to cast, meaning you can't deploy it reactively unless you're a sorcerer with Quicken spell. But Tiny Hut is wild. Tiny Hut is broken. It's various protections meant to keep it Tiny Hunt meant to keep it from being like easily circumvented or just like blown apart. Its function as a quick deploy tent gives it protections that allow you to abuse it in other ways. Love Tiny Hut. I try not to abuse it too much because I don't want to make my DM's life horrible, but yeah, creative use can break Tiny Hut very easily. Next up we have Major Image, speaking of broken as hell. A 3rd level illusion spell that I'm just going to toss into S rank already. And we're going to get to the description. Requires concentration in all of the components. You create the image of an object, a creature, or some other visible phenomenon that is no larger than a 20-foot cube. The image appears at a spot you can see within range and lasts for the duration. It seems completely real, including sounds, smells, and temperature appropriate to the thing depicted. You can't create sufficient heat or cold to cause damage, a sound loud enough to deal thunder damage, or deafen a creature, or a smell that might sicken a creature. As long as you are within range of the illusion, you can use your action to cause the image to move to any other spot within range. As the image changes location, you can, just like Minor Image, you can make it look like it's walking or moving or hovering or flying. You can make it make different sounds at different times, even making it carry on in conversation, for example. Physical with the interaction with the image reveals it to be an illusion because things can pass through it. It's not solid. A creature that can use its action to examine the image can determine that it is an illusion with a successful intelligence investigation check against your spell save DC. If the determined creature discerns the illusion for what it is, they can see through it, and its other sensory qualities become faint to the creature. It's Minor Image. It's Minor Illusion. It's Silent Image. It's all of that and better. I also called it Major Illusion by accident. Major Image is only limited by your imagination. You can do all sorts of shit with this spell. You can, and also, I want to point out the material component. It's a bit of fleece, because you're fleecing people. Major Image is one of my favorite spells. It's good. It's a good spell. Don't use it a lot, because I don't run into a lot of situations in this latest campaign where I can use it a lot, but quite good. Next up, we've got Non-Detection. Like I said, quite good, and put it in the S tier. It's really fucking good. Next up, we have Non-Detection, a 3rd level abjuration spell that spends 25 GP every time you cast it, but has verbal and somatic components otherwise. For the duration of Non-Detection, that is for 8 hours, you hide a target that you touch from divination magic. The target can be a willing creature, or place, or an object no larger than 10 feet away in any dimension. The target can't be targeted by any divination magic or perceived through magical scrying sensors. So, Non-Detection not only stops magical scrying, but it has a side effect that a lot of people don't think about, and that is it grants immunity to divination spells. Any divination spell that targets it, it's immune to that spell. True Strike, for example, this shuts down the one side used for True Strike, but it also shuts down things like Bane. As if we remember, oh wait, Bane's an enchantment. Never mind. Yeah, it's highly campaign situational, but in those campaigns, this is a must take. Also, again, side protection from all sorts of divination spells. Excellent spell, but situational. Gonna sit in the B rank, because if you take this as a bard and you are not getting constant use out of it, that's a 3rd level spell that you took that is just sitting there doing nothing. And it's gonna feel bad. Oftentimes you'll want to take Intellect Fortress over this, but Non-Detection, when it's good, it's good. Next up, we're going to take a look at Plant Growth, 3rd level transmutation spell. Also, hello. Meant to say hello there. Plant Growth is a 3rd level transmutation spell that only requires verbal and somatic components, so, you know, there's that. This spell channels vitality into plants within a specific area. There are 2 possible uses for the spell, granting either immediate or long-term benefits. You are never, as a bard, going to use the long-term one, but we'll get to that. If you cast this spell using one action, choose a point within range. All normal plants within a 100-foot radius centered on that point become thick and overgrown. A creature moving through the area must spend 4 feet of movement for every 1 foot it moves. This is notable because it's double difficult terrain. You can exclude 1 or more areas of any size within the spell's area from being affected. If you cast this spell over 8 hours, you instead enrich the land. All plants within a half-mile radius centered on a point within range become enriched for 1 year. The plants yield twice the normal amount of food when harvested. Plant Growth is a druid spell that you have access to for no good reason, really. It's not bad. It's a good spell. The difficult terrain effect is actually the worst of the two, surprisingly enough, as a bard, you have other better ways of creating difficult terrain. You can cast Grease, the best spell in the game. On the other effect, however, can be extremely useful. Mostly just for making people like you. As a bard, you're going to be traveling around more. You're more of a negotiator anyway. You're more talking to people. You can use this to easily gain the trust of communities, which can be highly useful as a bard. Otherwise, yeah, it is basically it's a druid toolkit spell that you could take if you really want to. You're mostly going to take it for flavor reasons, or if you really just like plant magic. It functioning as sort of another background feature, however, lands it firmly in the middle of the road as a, like, I just leveled up and I don't have a way to make people like me for some reason, or I really, really want to mess with the peasants. Or I want to make friends with druids. There's a lot of small, weird situations where this spell would come up, and therefore it's going to live in the C tier as a middle-of-the-road, potentially decent choice for the social engineering factor. Oh boy, fucking Sending. Here we go. The 3rd level evocation spell, Sending. Verbal somatic material components, nothing worth worrying about. You send a short message of 25 words at last to a creature with which you are familiar. The creature hears the message in its mind, recognizes you as the sender if it knows you, and can answer in a like manner immediately. This spell enables creatures with intelligence scores of at least 1 to understand the meaning of your message. You can send the message across any distance, and even to other planes of existence. But if the target is in a different plane than you, there's a 5% chance the message just goes and disappears. Sending sounds better than it is. For a bard, as a 3rd level spell pick, this is at best middle of the road. It's very powerful, however, it's situational. Like with the other C-tier spells, like Pyrotechnics and Knock and Plant Growth and the base level Bestow Curse and Cloud of Daggers, you're gonna be happy you got it if you need it, but it's not so widely powerful that it's like a major consideration outside of those circumstances. Like, long-range communication, really, really good, but as a 3rd level spell, it's really expensive. Even if it was a 2nd level spell, I would be hesitant, because it's just... Your spell choice as a bard, while not as narrow as a sorcerer's, is pretty narrow, and so you have to be economical about what you pick. It either has to be really emphatic flavor-wise, or you're going to get a lot of use out of it. And Sending can be both of those things. Depending on what kind of bard you are, depending on your campaign, it's a lot like non-detection in that respect, but it doesn't have a lot of useful side benefits. It's only got its niche. That said, one thing that makes this sort of ride C and B for me is the ability to enable creatures with low intelligence scores to understand the meaning of your messages, as it effectively also replaces things like animal friendship, or speak with animals. Not entirely, but it's hard to discount. the ability to let creatures understand what you're saying, even if they have low intelligence. So we're going to put it in the C tier, because that's where I feel like putting it. It's like, what if Whispers was good? Or Message. What if Message was quite good? Which, Message landed as a D tier spell. Not a big fan of Message. Next up, we got our, Slow is an A tier. Slow is alright. Slow's not on this list. I'm pretty sure it was like Grease added later, because I know that bards get it. Slow and Haste. I'm gonna cover both of those after I finish the other third levels, and because I have both of them are gonna get great ratings. Anyway, third level Necromancy. Speak with Dead. Verbal Somatic. Material component that doesn't really matter. I mean, Burning Incense might be a little bit more difficult to grab a hold of than other costless material components. You do have to have a way to light it. Not a huge deal. If you took Prestidigitation, you don't care. You grant the semblance of life and intelligence to a corpse of your choice within range, allowing it to answer the questions you pose. The corpse must still have a mouth and can't be undead. The spell fails if the corpse was the target of this spell within the last 10 days. Until the spell ends, you can ask the corpse up to 5 questions. The corpse knows only what it knew in life, including the languages it knew. Answers are usually brief, cryptic, or repetitive, and the corpse is under no compulsion to offer a truthful answer if you were hostile to it or it recognizes you as an enemy. This spell doesn't return the creature's soul to its body, only its animating spirit. Thus, the corpse can't learn new information, doesn't comprehend anything that happened since it died, and can't speculate about future events. Speak with Dead is a B tier spell, because when you use it, it destroys problems. This solves problems like that. It does not solve a ton of problems, and it is a toolkit spell, meaning that as a bard, you probably want to let like the wizard or the cleric pick this up, or swap this in when they need it. But Speak with Dead is an amazing spell. It is iconic for bards, so, you know, you're definitely going to want to consider it at the very least. And it comes up, maybe not more often than you think, but it will make your DM cry. Your DM will put together a murder mystery and forget that a lot of classes have access to this spell, and you're going to use it, and they are going to silently weep as they now have to just give away the whole mystery. DMs have to design around Speak with Dead. They also have to design around Speak with Plants, the next spell. Speak with Dead's a B. I like Speak with Dead. I don't take it very often, but when I want it, oh, it's so nice. Next up, we're going to talk about Speak with Plants. Speak with Dead's friend. Third level transmutation spell that only requires a verbal and somatic components. You imbue plants within 30 feet of you with limited sentience and animation, giving them the ability to communicate with you and follow your simple commands. You can question plants about events in the spell's area within the past day, gaining information about creatures that have passed, weather, and other circumstances. You can also turn difficult terrain caused by plant growth into ordinary terrain that lasts for the duration if you really fucking need to. Or you can turn ordinary terrain where plants are present into difficult terrain that lasts for the duration, causing vines and branches to hinder pursuers, for example. Plants might be able to perform other tasks on your benefit at the DM's discretion. The spell doesn't enable plants to uproot themselves and move about, but they can freely move branches, tendrils, and stalks. If a plant creature is in the area, you can communicate it as if you shared a common language, but you gain no magical ability to influence it. This spell can cause the plants created by Entangle to release a restrained creature. It interacts with plant growth and Entangled, that's for druids. You as a bard are going to get a lot of use out of the plant creature aspect of this ability, surprisingly enough, as bards are very persuasive conversational people, and enabling you to talk to things is almost as good as magically influencing them. This is another of those toolkit spells that you like steal from another class, but the bard's application for it is going to be much different than the druid's application for it, as the druid is going to want to work this in with Entangle and plant growth and really work their green magic shit. But as a bard, you're going to use this to gather information. You're going to use this to make friends out of potential enemy plant creatures. You're going to do all... This is one of those spells that you'll be astonished how many situations it comes up in. It comes up in more often than Speak with Dead easily, as plants are everywhere. Plants see everything. Never underestimate Speak with Plants. Also, as a bard, this is one of those thematically spells. Chef Kiss. You can't see it, but I was doing it. I don't have an animation to do a Chef Kiss yet. I should make one of those. I'm sorry. You're going to use Speak with Plants a lot, and it's very thematic for bards. Talking to things. It's what bards do best. It's fantastic. I love Speak with Plants. As limited as it is, it's just so flavorful. And those situations it comes up in, it's just beautiful. Next up is Stinking Cloud. This spell used to be a problem. Stinking Cloud is a 3rd level conjuration spell that requires the full bevy of components, verbal, somatic, material, and concentration. Create a 20-foot radius sphere of yellow, nauseating gas centered on a point within range. The cloud spreads around corners, and its area is heavily obscured. The cloud lingers in the air for the duration. Each creature that is completely within the cloud at the start of its turn must make a Constitution saving throw against poison. On a failed save, the creature spends its action retching and reeling. Creatures that don't need to breathe or are immune to poison automatically succeed on this saving throw. A moderate wind disperses the cloud after 4 rounds. A strong wind disperses it after 1 round. Stinking Cloud is one of those spells that used to be a major problem and got nerfed. It's still very, very powerful. But yes, it is the fart with reverb spell. Yes, correct. A 20-foot radius is pretty big, and this basically just turns off encounters. It does not obscure the area, but turning off everyone's turn, like just causing everyone caught in it to lose a turn, is very powerful. Unfortunately, it has to contend with Hypnotic Pattern in its own level, and it also has to contend with Tasha's Hideous Laughter in level 1 of all places. And on top of Grease, you have better ways to do this as a bard. As a wizard, as a sorcerer, as a warlock, this is more valuable. But as a bard, this is just yet another way to make someone lose a turn. It's a lot more inconsistent because poison is a common resistance and common immunity. And there are a lot of creatures that don't need to breathe that you can still hit with, like, Hypnotic Pattern or Grease. Therefore, like, that's why Stinking Cloud is a C. It's not bad by any means. Just as a bard, you've got better choices. But if you want that fart with reverb joke, if you want to be, like, a total fucking clown, which, yeah, if you're a bard, why aren't you being a total fucking clown? Stinking Cloud is a funny option. It's very funny. And finally, at least on this list, I'm gonna get to Haste and Slow next, because Haste and Slow are special mentions. They got added later, so I'm just gonna count them in. We have Tongues here. Tongues is a 3rd level divination spell that requires a verbal component and some kind of material, it doesn't really matter. This spell grants the creature you touch the ability to understand any spoken language it hears. Moreover, when the target speaks, any creature that knows at least one language and can hear the target understands what it says. This spell enables you to ignore the language mechanic entirely. You just ignore the language mechanic entirely. Every single bard in existence should take this spell unless they are super strapped for 3rd level selections, which you can be. There are a lot of must-takes in the 3rd level, including Dispel Magic, Hypnotic Pattern, Tiny Hut, Major Image. That's the only thing that makes this not a must-take at all times. If you have the room, and as a bard, you probably want to take Tongues, because Tongues just enables everything you can do. It is an S-tier spell for bards, easily. And, probably an S-tier for clerics as well, because they just kind of get it. Tongues is fantastic. Alright, to finish up here, because I was gonna... I didn't expect to linger this long on the lower level spells. So like I'm exhausted. So I'm gonna close it out with slow and haste here. Two utterly ridiculous spells that if I felt like making a tier above S, both haste, slow, and grease would all live above S. They would live in the take this under all take this at all costs tier. Let's start with slow, which is a 3rd level transmutation spell. You alter time around up to 6 creatures of your choice in a 40-foot cube within range. Each target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be affected by the spell for the duration. An affected target's speed is halved. It takes a -2 penalty to AC and Dex saving throws and can't use reactions. On its turn, you can use either an action or a bonus action, not both. Oh, these are underneath the thing. Thank you for calling that out. Regardless of the creature's abilities or magic items, it can't make more than 1 melee or ranged attack during its turn. If the creature attempts to cast a spell with a casting time of 1 action, roll a d20. On an 11 or higher, the spell doesn't take effect until the creature's next turn, and the creature must use its action on that turn to complete the spell. If it can't, the spell is wasted. A creature affected by this spell makes another wisdom saving throw during its turn, and the spell will save the effect ends for it. Slow is a spell that used to be a problem, and they nerfed it, and it still is a problem. Slow is effectively, what if nobody of your enemies got to do anything? It is an utterly ridiculous, super powerful debuff that is only held back by being a debuff that requires concentration. It is probably the best debuff you can spend your concentration on that isn't Hex, but you're a bard. Why are you using Hex? Well, you're using Hex if you got it for free, like Gravelspot's did. Slow is ridiculous. Slow is incredibly busted. It gains you incredible advantage. That -2 to AC and Dex doesn't sound so big, and it's not. But the turning off reactions entirely, limiting a creature to only 1 action, fucking up its speed, turning off multi and extra attack features. Slow does a lot to shut down some of the most dangerous enemies in the game, and on top of shutting down spellcasters. There are better ways to shut down just spellcasters, but if you're facing a large group of enemies, or a bunch of really dangerous physical attackers, slow can save your bacon, and it can push an even fight into just a hilarious curb stomp. Slow is an easy S tier. Honestly, I'm gonna rename S, but I'm not gonna rename it to slow tier. It's grease tier. We have grease tier and true strike tier. And then finally, to close it out, we have one of my favorite spells. One of my favorite spells of all time. Haste. Haste is a spell that has, in every single edition it's appeared in, been a major problem. It has been nerfed. It is still a major problem. Why is haste a major problem? Why it's a major problem? For the opposite reasons that slow is a major problem. Verbal somatic material, yeah. Concentration, whoop-de-doo. Choose a willing creature that you can see within 30 feet. Until the spell ends, the target's speed is doubled, gains +2 to AC, advantage on Dex saves, and it gains an additional action on each of its turns. That action can only be used to take the attack, dash, disengage, hide, or use an object action. When the spell ends, after a minute, the target can't move or take actions until after its next turn as a wave of lethargy sweeps over it. As long as you don't lose your concentration, this is never going to run out in combat, because combat's going to end well before it has a chance to run out. Haste is incredibly busted. Giving another player character or yourself an additional action, especially use an object or attack, is bonkers. You destroy action economy with this. You pop this on like the fighter or the monk, and you stand back and you watch as their somewhat impressive 2 or 3 attacks per turn becomes a blistering 3 or 4 attacks per turn. You put this on the rogue and just watch them go stab happy. They can do all sorts of setup stuff and then get their sneak attack off with the bonus haste attack. Like, this has synergy with literally every class except spellcasters. Unfortunately, you can't use it on opponents because the DM is just gonna have the enemy target be unwilling. As you know, why wouldn't they? You can't use it to deny them their turn, and in all honesty, that is the worst way to use this spell. You have lower slot requirement ways, you have lower level spells that will deny someone their action and deny them multiple actions. So using haste as a cute little gotcha might be funny, but definitely not great. Haste, as used properly, is still as broken as it ever was. Haste is one of those spells that I hesitate to take because it's just so busted that it's a must take. And I have Grease tier spells are fun. They're usually a combination of fun, incredibly powerful, and just so fucking good that there are must takes. They are spells that if you don't take them, you probably have one very specific gimmick in mind. They're wild. But that is gonna be all of the 3rd level spells. Not all 3rd and below. I missed a bunch of cantrips that got added to the Bard spell list in I think Fizbin's. I added a couple of I missed a couple 1st and 2nd level spells, but they weren't that big a deal. Grease, Haste, and Slow are the big ones I wanted to get to, and I covered a lot in the course of 4 hours. I did not expect to be at this as long as I did. So yeah, thank you for coming by. I think I'm gonna call it off here, and the next time we have one of these no D&D session days, I will do another ranking. Maybe I'll eventually get to other classes' spells, and we can talk about maybe even some of the same spells and how relevant they are to those classes, because as you might have caught, other classes have uses for these spells that might be different, might make them better, might even make them worse. But for now, that's gonna be it. Let me take a quick look to see if there's anyone I can raid you over to. Not really. We got, yeah. I think we're gonna be good for now. So thank you for coming by. I hope you have yourselves a wonderful evening, and remember to come by again next Monday for card games. And let's see, next Monday is going to be card games. On next Tuesday is more Mega Man Battle Network 2, so keep an eye out for those things. And if you want, don't forget to ask Nightbot for that delicious Discord link. Hey Nightbot, give people the Discord link. Thanks, Nightbot. You can get notifications there, and we have discussions and all that fun stuff. So thank you for coming by. Hope you have yourselves a good evening. Wash your hands, stay indoors, wear a mask, and remember, above all else, put grease on your spell list.